I put down my glasses. I have to have my glasses to read off, everybody. But our first author this afternoon's panel, here we go, is Jeannette Brown for The Illusion of Leaving, a novel. Hi, Jeannette. You've got 15 minutes and a little early. Be sure you're on unmute in the bottom corner and just end a little early so we can give your contact information to introduce the next author, okay?
Okay.
Let you go.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathy, for inviting me to this super party. And I did enjoy David's talk because I too am a playwright in addition to a novelist and a short story writer. So I think he's right that you can do it all. I want to tell you about my book and my crown, which is The Illusion of Leaving. It's, and because I didn't know the format today, I have made a list of frequently asked questions that people ask me in an interview or ask of authors generally. And so first question is usually, what is your book about? And I say, that's a good question. My book is about, it's set in West Texas, a small town. You all know how small towns go. It's about 3 women in their 60s, and they are back, 2 of them are back in town for a funeral. One already lives there. There's a lot of leftover baggage, and these 3 women get caught in a tornado shelter with an appropriate level of beverages, and things start happening and coming out, and we deal with family secrets and 40-year-old grudges. So that's part of the intrigue. And where did you get the idea for this book? Well, I was at a class reunion in my small town, and I looked around and I was amazed at how different the women my age were from the women of my mother's age. The women my age have traveled. We've had careers. We've, a lot of us went to college and then traveled and had careers and children. And we go to the gym too. The concept of exercise is new to, in my generation, I guess. And we attribute a lot of this to birth control, that we had more control over our lives and our options. So here are these women, my age, your age maybe, that are not making decisions. They're just out of college and they're deciding marriage, career, whatever. These women are living with the decisions that they made 40, 30 years ago. Was it hard to get a publisher? Not really. I didn't go the agent route. The Texas Review Press has a contest, the George Garrett contest for the novel. And I entered my manuscript and it was runner-up, and so they published it. What did the reviewers say? Well, thank you for asking. They said a gorgeous character-driven novel. They said a lively, humorous, and cathartic story. They said a literary treasure. Thank you for that. And the Lone Star Literary Review picked my book as one of the top 10 Texas books for 2020. That's a real honor coming from those people. They read a lot of books and review a lot of books. Did the COVID virus affect your launch? Yes, ma'am, it did. My book came out in May, and like all the other authors in that period that had book launches, we had our readings and our parties and our book tours all set up. I had, because there's a funeral in my book that looms large, I had funeral fans made up to give out at my tour. So that didn't happen. We mailed it out with the books that were ordered. But anyway, my local independent bookstore and I arranged for a drive-by launch where we were masked and gloved, sitting out on the sidewalk in front of the bookstore, and people drove by, handed us their credit cards. I signed their books, they drove away. It was at that point in May, we were just all beginning to understand cabin fever. And so they told me that a lot of people said they were glad to have a destination in besides the grocery store. So it was actually turned out to be a lot of fun. Another question that I get is, how important is humor in your writing? Humor is very important in my life because I don't like to take things really seriously. So humor is important in my writing. I find that you can judiciously use humor in your writing when things in the book get too tense. Drop down to humor and give your reader a breathing moment, and it kind of changes course till you can rebuild the tension again after that. What is the weirdest thing that ever happened to me? I was in Guatemala in a coup, in the middle of a coup. And no, I have not written about that because who would believe that? Anyway, it was too weird. Would you like to read a bit from your novel? Why, yes, thank you, I would. I'm uncrowned. This is The Illusion of Leaving. Jamie is our protagonist, and she has been to her father's funeral, and then she went to the reading of the will, and she came out not happy. She has been betrayed, but yet she has to go to the Methodist church because the Methodist ladies are feeding the family as they are wont to do. Aromas of cinnamon and yeast fill the hall of the Silver Falls First Methodist Church. The murmuring voices momentarily stop when Jamie passes under the plaque dedicating the rec room to its donor, her mother, Dolores Spivey Wright. The voices resume as she spots the pink-haired Wanda waving her over to a counter crowded with Tupperware bowls. Your days of hamburgers and pizzas are over. We've got meatloaf and King Ranch casserole and rump roast, mac and cheese, sweet corn, yeast rolls, cornbread, light bread, you name it. Jamie wants to be hungry, wants to be polite and eat something from each of the dozens of options, but her stomach is in turmoil, as is her brain. She tries to ignore the food, trying to take in the blandness of the room. When Dolores designed and funded this wing of the church, she had decorated it in pale Italianate yellows and blues. She imported tropical plants, palms and such, real ones, which the church ladies allowed to die. Now the room, floor, ceiling, and walls has been painted beige by Methodist women with a more conventional taste in decor. And there remains not a plant, bookcase, framed print, or rug to suck up the bouncing echoes of voices and the shuffling of metal chairs. Miss Burns, Jamie's fourth grade teacher, waves a decrepit little paw in Jamie's direction before she falls back to her fable feeding. Jamie makes her way between the diners to give Miss Burns a gentle hug and notices Mr. Wilkinson, the retired civics teacher / wrestling coach, sitting next to her. Jamie would have sworn they were both deceased long ago, yet here they are, ghosts of her past, but not the hectoring kind. An elderly gnome accosts Jamie, who leans down to hear the soft voice. Jamie Wright, don't let Superintendent Walsh make you buy those lights for the baseball field. I go to bed at 8:30 every night and they'll blaze right into my bedroom all summer. They'll keep me up. They'll upset my system. Jamie's taken aback that a local would reject a gift to the school. Couldn't you get blackout shades? The woman frowns, backs up a little. Me and my neighbors are widow women. Even if we could afford such, there's no handyman in town anymore to hang them or fix a pipe leak or cut a tree limb threatening a roof. I never thought about the lights causing a problem. Thank you for your opinion. Jamie is amused at the possibility of civic conflict, and for a moment forgets her broken heart. After patting and tapping and otherwise acknowledging the Silver Falls ancients, Jamie makes her way back to the food table. She glances around the room again, taking in the frizzy gray perms and bald heads, the flabby upper arms and the stooped shoulders. She understands that too soon she will be gray and flabby. Always the outsider for a moment, she feels a quiet kinship with the people of Silver Falls, Big Jim's people and hers too. Now she's wolfish, filling a plate with every possibility, letting the potato salad touch the yam casserole and the tuna salad, if that's what it is, although it appears to be mostly mayonnaise. Yeast rolls and cornbread, both with butter. She intends to eat her way through grief and anger. What is next for me? Thank you for asking. What is next for me is I have another manuscript of a novel that I am trying to get published either through an agent or some other way. And I'm writing plays now, which is a whole lot of fun because you don't have to put all that, she thought this and she felt that. You just dialogue, and I like that part. So are there any questions? I'm checking the chat. Okay, well, congratulations on joining this party. I think we're going to have a lovely 4-day weekend full of books and chatter about books. So thank you for checking out my book.
Thank you, Jeannette.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please tell everybody how they can ask you any burning questions. What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Okay, I think my contacts are listed. My email is jnetb@mac.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear about your writing. I have a website, Jeannette Brown Author. And my latest screenplay is hilarious because I have put Marilyn Monroe in Cuba with Frank Sinatra, Hemingway, and Fidel Castro.
Oh my goodness.
It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Humor.
That sounds really interesting. Now that's a screenplay, not a book?
It's a stage play.
Stage play. Well, it looks like we're going to have a lot of playwrights here this weekend. So
I think so. And I really appreciated David's introductory talk because it was right down my alley, and having somebody who's doing, I write short stories and plays and novels. So it's good to hear that other people are trying out all the genres. Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate your time.
You're so welcome. And for all that are just joining in, as this meeting is all on one link, I'm having one person that's having trouble getting on. So I'm trying to work on that. For some reason, it's not working for him. So working on that. But as we go at the end of this thing, we have to go to another link. And when you go to the other link, we've got to kind of start over. And the reason why is we're recording all these. And so next up, we've got an author. This is really going to be fun. At 2:30, Ross Davis, The Mad Woman of Preacher's Cove, a novel. So as she gets onto screen here, I see you over there. Can you, I need to change just a second. Let me get the video back on. Okay, I've got all of yours that have sent me books here in front of me. So this is the book that she's going to have. And I think we can go ahead, since everybody's in the place, we can go ahead and start with you if you want to begin, Joe Ross Davis, and I'm going to see if I can get this author back on. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'm here. Thank you, Kathy. And hello to everybody. If you hadn't guessed by now, I'm from the South. I'm from Alabama. And so I might sound a little bit different than the rest of you, but hopefully that won't change the way I write. And my book is called The Mad Woman of Preacher's Cove. It is paranormal fiction about a woman named Lucy Adams who is horribly disfigured in a fire. The fire killed her children and her husband and left her with nothing except a mangled face. And so she's known in town as the monster because she's so difficult to look at. And her sister, her twin sister, has a room where Lucy works. And even though she was driven insane by the losses that she suffered, in their place came a sort of magical gift. And that gift was that she became an artistic genius. She could make dolls that were replicas of the children that lived in Preacher's Cove, Alabama. And these dolls had a bit of magic about them, not much, but a bit of magic around them. And each doll contained a message for the owner. And so Lucy, in her madness, which that's where the title comes from, she's called the Mad Woman. But in her madness, she has the key to solving a mystery in the town. There have been some unexpected deaths by lightning strike. And Lucy and her sister know how to stop those deaths. But because Lucy is insane, she can't tell people what she knows. And so she and her sister work together to explain and to stop the deaths in this little town. And that's the story. The Mad Woman of Preacher's Cove. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
What are some of the ways they work together to help the people know what to do?
Libby, who is her twin sister, is one of the few people who can communicate with Lucy. She's taken care of her since the accident. And so really all they have to do to communicate is for Libby to stand with her arms around Lucy. And when she hugs her close to her body like that, they can talk to one another. And so it's a sort of play on close family ties, which is really what the book is about. It's about redemption and about love in the family. And so that's how they do it.
Sounds
Joy?
great.
Yes.
Ask a question?
Joy, how did you decide to use death by lightning as multiple deaths? That's kind of unusual.
Would you like for me to tell you the truth?
Sure.
Okay. I was struck by lightning when I was 6 years old. And so lightning to me has been this force. And so it was a natural thing for me.
Oh, thanks. We have 32 people on this session.
Yes. Okay, so we have 32 people listening.
we
May I ask
muted
a
her.
question,
We
Joy?
muted her for you. But
Joy, can you hear me? Joy?
Yes.
Hi. I want to know how you knew about doll making. I read the book and I absolutely positively loved every page of it. But the
Thank
doll
you,
making, you really got in there with the intricacies of what they looked like. I mean, I could visualize them so well. So I want to know what you personally know about doll making, or if you haven't been doing that on the side, how did you know enough about to write about it so well?
Okay, when I was a child, young child, I had a doll collection and I had 200 dolls from all over the world. They were in a bookcase, a tall bookcase. I wasn't allowed to touch them, but I could look at them. And so at the library, at my library, when I was just little,
Yeah.
I would go and check out books about dolls. And then I got interested in pottery and making ceramics. I never did it, but I was interested in it. And so I read about the particular clay that is used in the finest china. And it was just a matter of researching and this childhood hangover of having all these dolls that I couldn't touch. I could look at them, and I spent a lot of time looking at those dolls. And so that's how it all happened.
That's fantastic.
And the mad
Joy,
one, yes, Johnny.
it's great to see you, as it is so many of my friends today.
Thank you.
I loved your book. It's more than just an entertaining read. If you haven't read it, it's a smart read. It crosses multiple genres, and that's spoken as one former English teacher to another. But Joy, I've had the pleasure of hearing the story behind this story, what inspired you, and I think your audience would love hearing it today. If you would
Okay.
share it.
The mad woman, the idea came to me years ago. I roomed with a girl in college who was burned very badly, over 90% of her body. And what had happened was that she was standing in front of a heater, and she had on a long flannel gown that buttoned in the back. And when her gown caught fire, she reached down and tried to pull it over her head. And of course, she couldn't because it was buttoned. And so the fire just continued to cover her body. She was terribly disfigured. And as you can imagine, but she was my roommate in college, and we got along so well that after a while, when I would look at her, I would see a different person. I wouldn't see the disfigured girl that at first, when everybody saw her, they were a little bit horrified. But I began to see her for her mind and her heart, and she became a different person to me. And so that's where the concept of the mad woman, the burn, that's where that came from. And the happy ending to her story is that when she graduated from college, she met and married her plastic surgeon. And so her life had a very happy ending. And I really wanted Mad Woman to reflect some of that joy that my friend had. So that's the whole backstory of where I got the idea.
Joy, we've just got a minute left. Can you tell everybody how to get in touch with you? Because I know they're going to want to know more about this story. Okay.
Yes,
How do-
I'm on Facebook, J. Davis Angel Writer. I have a webpage, joyrossdavis.com. I'm on Twitter, Joy Ross Davis. So if you want to find out more, you can just type in Joy Ross Davis and I'll come up somewhere.
Well, great. We have to move on. We're on a
Okay.
schedule.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
Awesome. Love the book. Okay. Next up, we have Illene English, who has written a book that I'm going to show to you. It's called Hippie Chick. Hippie Chick, coming of age in the 60s. It has a wonderful cover. I hope you all can see this. Illene, are you here? Illene is not here. Okay, well, we may have to stop just a minute. We may switch. Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm going to let you go ahead and start talking about your book, Illene.
Okay, I have to turn on my lights.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is really wonderful. Thank you for including me, Kathy.
We just need you to speak a little louder or get a little bit closer.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, I wrote this book. It's been a long time coming. I tried not to write it. I wanted to do all kinds of other things, but the book wanted to be written. And so when I turned 70, I decided to get serious about it. And I got myself an apartment. I just spent years my writings and my notes and into a journey, my journey really. So I'm going to read to you, and I'll just give you a tiny bit of background. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So I was the youngest of 6 children with a very seriously ill mother. She had heart disease, and a very angry, frustrated father. I was raised in the middle of a shopping center because my father refused to sell our house when they were building stores all around us. And my older siblings had all left home. And I was the one left alone. And I was a very rebellious, angry teenager. And in the midst of that, I found my mother dead on the toilet. And so then after that, I was stuck living alone with my father, which was a whole story in itself. But after I graduated high school a year later, my sister Carol sent me a plane ticket to leave Irvington, New Jersey, and come be with her in California. I had never been out of New Jersey. I had never been on a plane. So I'm going to read a story from that time. It's an excerpt from Hippie Chick, in chapter 4, if anybody wants to read along. For me, San Francisco was like coming home. I was now a misfit among misfits. But we'll step back. Carol picked me up and took me up to Twin Peaks. And if anybody knows San Francisco, it's like a view of the city that's amazing. I was completely overwhelmed by the view. I could barely take it in. Each of my chapters has a quote. This one is, once in a while, right in the middle of an ordinary life, love gives us a fairy tale. It's an anonymous quote. Carol and David lived just across the Golden Gate Bridge in Tiburon. Theirs was a beautiful rambling house overlooking the lush green pasture. An old sway-backed horse named Blackie stood day after day in that meadow on the banks of San Francisco Bay. Through an enormous picture window, shades of pastels, pinks and oranges competed with blues and greens for my attention. The exquisite beauty of the view overwhelmed me, in stark contrast to the colorless shades of gray I was so familiar with. A rambunctious St. Bernard puppy named Bernard ran into me as we went out to feed Carol's pet goat tethered on the hillside behind the house. A mynah bird living in a cage in the kitchen called out, "Bonjour, monsieur," every time I entered the room. At 23, Carol had already seized the opportunity to create a life that fit her dreams, a life as different from where we came from as one could imagine. And to my good fortune, part of my sister's vision was for me not to get left behind. Her husband, David, was a gem. He had a gentle, calm, and refined way about him. He seemed delighted by Carol's free spirit, and she seemed to adore him. Though David came from a prestigious and formal background, his father was Frank Lloyd Wright's private engineer. They shared a bohemian sense of adventure, appreciation for art, and a zest for life. David liked to call me his teenage daughter. I guess it was his way of letting me know that he cared about me. Living with them was more than I could have imagined. When we had steak for dinner, I thought it unreal that everyone got their very own steak, unlike in my family, where my mother divided up one steak for the whole family. David loved to eat and told stories of traveling the world to experience foods from every country he visited. He was the first person I knew who spoke several languages. When he took us to Chinatown for dinner, I was wide-eyed as he ordered all the dishes in Chinese. David was a lawyer. I was fascinated how he dressed in a suit every morning, complete with a crisp shirt and necktie, something I had never seen before. When I first arrived, he would often take me with him to his office in the city. I would wander around San Francisco, and then we'd meet for a Zimburger at lunchtime. I sometimes spent afternoons in his office helping with filing. At the end of the workday, he'd put the top down on his custom sports car for the drive back across the bridge. David enjoyed reminding me to look up to experience the awesome beauty that is the Golden Gate Bridge. Besides being a lawyer, David was into buying and selling real estate. He owned several apartment buildings in San Francisco. One Sunday morning, soon after I arrived, they were sitting in the sunshine reading the San Francisco Chronicle when the phone rang. It was a call about one of their apartments for rent. When Carol hung up, she said, "David, I have to go into the city to show the apartment." "I wonder if maybe Ilene might like to do that," David suggested. "I think she could handle it," Carol added. "Ilene," David called in his soft-spoken way, "would you be interested in driving the Cadillac into the city to show the apartment?" He was referring to Carol's beautiful maroon Cadillac convertible with the white top. "By myself? Oh, sure, that would be fun." I couldn't believe my good fortune as David wrote out directions to 955 Clayton Street and handed me the keys. Carol showed me where the emergency brake and made sure I understood how to curb the wheels when I parked on a San Francisco hill. Then with a bright smile, she helped put down the top. Giddy with excitement, I waved and was off on my first solo adventure into the city. As I approached the bridge, San Francisco came into focus, bright, sparkling, and stunning in the late morning sun. My thoughts turned to Carol, how tall and beautiful she looked that morning in her Hawaiian muumuu, her shiny, long, dark hair hanging free. My sister gave me a special gift that morning, a ponytail of human hair she had brought back from Thailand. She knew that my crazy Jewish hair had always been a source of despair for me. I wanted long, straight hair like she had, and I spent every day of my life trying to tame my wild, curly hair. My high school best friend, Donna, loved to laugh at me for how obsessed I was about my hair. Throughout high school, I set my hair with dippity-doo and slept on tortuously big plastic rollers. But no matter what I did, if there was any moisture at all in the air, my hair would frizz like cotton candy as soon as I stepped outside. Carol spent the morning securing and weaving the hairpiece into my hair. It looked incredibly real, and I was excited to wear the ponytail into the city. The Cadillac handled like a dream. I cranked up the radio and happily sang along with Puff the Magic Dragon. My old life back in New Jersey felt very far away. 3 guys were waiting for me as I pulled up outside the building. Hello, I'm Tom, and this is Bud, and I'm Bob. What's your name? I'm Ilene. Nice car you got there. Yeah, isn't it? I said, feeling out of my league. The place was a beautiful brown shingled apartment building a few blocks off Haight. I unlocked the apartment as instructed, and we went inside. What a great place this is, the guys exclaimed at the large open living room with gold shag, wall-to-wall carpeting and beam ceiling. Everyone, including me, spread out to look at the rest of the place. Coming back together, Bud said, yeah, I really like this place, but hey, it's too much money for us guys. The others nodded in agreement. Still, we lingered at the apartment, talking and imagining what it would be like to live in this great place. I learned that Tom, Bud, and Bob were in their mid-20s and had moved here from the Midwest. Bud was long and tall, about 6'2". He said he, quote, escaped from Topeka, Kansas. He was a psychiatric technician at St. Mary's Hospital nearby, which explained his hospital whites. Bob, the athletic-looking one, was edgy and said whatever was on his mind. He really liked Black people, which was not very popular, he said, back in the Midwest. That's why he decided to leave Kansas. Tom had curly hair, wore glasses, and was kind of tall. The shy one, he seemed both funny and cynical. I learned that he was from Rochester, Minnesota, and that his father was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic. I was 17, still a virgin, and barely off the boat from New Jersey, but I was driving a maroon Cadillac convertible and had a long, beautiful ponytail. You know, there's actually 4 bedrooms if you count the attic, Tom said. Maybe we could find someone to take the 4th bedroom. Then it would be affordable. Yeah, that would work. Hey, how about you, Bob asked as he turned to me. Where do you live? Me? I just moved here from New Jersey. I'm staying at my sister and brother-in-law's house in Tiburon. Interested in moving out and living here with us? Bob asked. I think it's a great idea. You couldn't find 3 nicer guys than us, Tom said. I don't know. I'll ask my sister what she thinks, I answered, my voice tentative. Yeah, I agree. You could have the bedroom with the balcony next to the kitchen, and I'll take the attic room, Bud offered. When I got back home, I told Carol and David about the idea of moving in with these guys. Were they nice guys? Well, yeah, they were really nice. Well, what do you think? Do you want to live in San Francisco with 3 guys? I guess so, I replied. Okay, then call them and tell them it's a deal, Carol said excitedly. But how will I pay the rent? I don't have a job or any money. I'll bet if Ilene shares on us, David suggested, looking to Carol. Yes, of course, and Ilene, you don't have to tell them. We'll just divide the rent by 4, and your share will be a gift from us to you, Carol added. Wow, David and Carol want me to do this. I couldn't believe it. So much for my father telling me not to talk to strangers. I was about to move in with 3 of them. I was excited and feeling a bit scared as I dialed the phone. I'll be the 4th roommate, I announced to Bob. Great, hey, hang on a minute. Then he yelled to the others, hey guys, it's Ilene on the phone. She says yes. All right, let's do it, Bob said enthusiastically when he came back to the phone. A few days before moving in, Carol took me to her doctor to be fitted for a diaphragm, even though I was still a virgin. The doctor gave me a pelvic exam. I didn't know what a pelvic exam was and was shocked to find out. My sister smiled cheerfully as we left the doctor's. I guess in her mind, now that I was armed with birth control, I was ready to begin my new life. And so, just a couple of months after my arrival in California, I was moving to San Francisco. It was the summer of 1963. Can you hear me? Yeah. You can't hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed your story, and that's just the beginning, you guys, because this time frame always has interested me because I'm really more of a child of the 70s, but the 60s, you know, I had heard all the great stories, and you pretty much tell what it was really like, and it's a story I had not heard before. Anybody have any questions about Ilene's book or any comments they would like to unmute yourself, and we've got a little bit of time. I think I'm running early. How could that be? That's amazing. We might just get done a little early so we have a little bit of
I have a
time.
question.
So,
Ilene, are you
yes.
still in California?
I'm back in California. I've been it's been a circle.
Are you in Tiburon now?
No, I'm in Sonoma County.
Lucky you. Okay.
One of the things I remember from that time period is I ironed my hair. Did you ever consider that?
My hair. I did it all.
I
But
can't.
it's a crazy time. I went out to Hawaii on a one-way ticket in 1969. I didn't know they had more than 2 islands in the Hawaiian Islands. I ended up going to school there. But my first experience was in my brother's house. I'd never seen marijuana. And when you walked in the room, there was this big old-fashioned kitchen dispensary, how the old-timey things, they put the flour in there and it kind of ground it out at the bottom. It was full of who knows what. And then there was a large breast, paper mache breast in colors of the US flag. And if you took off the front part, there was a picture, I think of one of the new Hollywood stars, but that was my introduction to that whole period. I didn't know what bean sprouts were.
I spent a lot of time in Hawaii also.
Mhm.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, I'm Joe Palmer. I came in kind of late into this in your reading here, but I got to say you nailed it. I was listening to some good old Grateful Dead music last night. I'm a kid of the 60s, as if you wouldn't know. And I loved it. It was spot on. I can't wait to read the rest of your book.
Thank you so much. I'd like to
Well,
hear.
and Eileen, it wasn't all that easy for us guys. I mean, you see Joe's hair now, but I had hair down past my shoulders then. And I spent as much time in the bathroom as you guys trying to keep it from flipping up and flipping under and ironing and whatever. And if my dad only knew how much time I spent in the bathroom trying to not look like I spent time in the bathroom, he would have rolled over in his grave. So it was a lot of fun. Do you view your life, quote, as a hippie? Do you think it affected your view towards life the rest of the years from here on out?
Without a doubt. I was changed by the experience. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. In a good way.
I think we all had kind of a glass half full, that, oh yeah, stuff happens, big deal, let's move on,
Right.
Well, I didn't go there to be a hippie. It kind of happened around me. I just happened to be the first person there. And so I watched the whole thing unfold and I embraced it fully. But it was early. There was still a lot of innocence. And the drugs were not illegal yet. And it was very experimental and it's a magical thing that was amongst us, the marijuana and the LSD and all the psychedelics. It was like some kind of a magical thing that was happening. And it was before we got cynical and bad things started happening. Yeah, it was a very sweet time.
Yeah, and of course the Vietnam War, you can't go away from that, especially for men. That was the thing that really either made them go. In Hawaii, I got to know a lot of servicemen who were stationed there, and they would try to grow their hair out as far as regulation would go, but they were just waiting. But that had a huge effect on my male friends in that time period, because I graduated from high school in '64 and college in '68, and right in the thick, the Vietnam War is really starting to have, and that's part of this whole excitement about being yourself, going on road trips. That's the other piece of this. I took to jump on a plane to go a place I didn't know on a one-way ticket. I don't know if I could do that.
Women didn't do it like they do now.
Right.
I remember when I lived in Hawaii, I would see these young men I would see them going and I'd see them when they came back. And the difference was stark. They came back with their eyes kind of dead. They had lost their innocence. It was really something to see.
Well, thank you, Eileen. We're running a little bit ahead, but we're going to save it for the end to go over some housekeeping. I still have, just so somebody, Echo or Douglas, Mary Morris can't seem to find the Zoom link page, if we can get that to her with all the Zooms. We have a few minutes. What's the best way they can get in touch with you Isleen, on if they want to ask you more questions about your book before we feature you throughout the year. This is not just a one-time girlfriend weekend. We're going to have you on our online book club. We're going to have you on our Breathless Bubbles and Books week post. We're going to be doing a lot of things throughout the year. So how do we get in touch with you, Isleen?
First, I just want to thank you, Kathy, for your generosity of spirit. It's quite a wonderful thing you're doing for authors. You can find me at my website, which is hippiechickmemoir.com. And I'm also on Facebook, Hippie Chick, or Isleen English on Instagram. I think there's a dot between Isleen and English. And yeah, you can find me if you Google me. I'm also a therapist. You'll probably see that too if you put in my name. Yeah.
Well, these stories are just so wonderful, everybody. I hope you're just getting a little taste of the nearly 70 authors, moderators, presenters, keynotes that we're going to have this week. But next up, thank you, Isleen. We'll get back. Tonight is the author meet and greet party, and I want all bloggers, everybody there. I'm going to introduce every one of you to everybody so that we'll get familiar with your faces, because a lot of you are new to me. But now we've got Stephen Manchester sent me this book, The Menu. You Are Never Alone, Not Ever. I want you to look at this book. He is here. Wave to everybody, Stephen. And why don't you begin by telling us the story behind the story? How did this book come about?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy. I really appreciate the opportunity to share the work today. Before I dive into the novel, if I may, I'd like to just give a brief glimpse of my background to explain how I ended up writing the book. Although he never put pen to paper, my grandfather he was an old swamp Yankee, but he was an amazing storyteller. He could make you laugh and cry. He spun tales that I couldn't tell what was fact or fiction. And to be honest, I didn't care. What I did learn was that, words have real power to connect us. I also realized that one day I wanted to be a storyteller too. So the seed was planted really early for me. Fast forward 2 decades, I chose a career in law enforcement. So I worked as a prison investigator in a medium security penitentiary in Massachusetts, while also holding the rank of sergeant in the U.S. Army National Guard Military Police. So as a young man, I was hooked on some adrenaline rushes, right? And hadn't at that time really started thinking about writing just yet. So life was going exactly as planned until Christmas night, 1990. I received a call from my platoon sergeant, who was a Vietnam vet. He informed me that my unit had been activated for Operation Desert Shield. So if you guys remember that period of time between 1990 and 1991, a little bit different, when you're wearing a uniform. But at that point, Saddam Hussein, he had the 4th largest army in the world. He had invaded Kuwait, and we were called to serve. So it was difficult. I was young. I was married. I was 23 at the time, which kind of made me an old man. A lot of people that serve are 17, 18, 19 years old. But I was a squad leader. One of the downsides is I owned a home at a young age, so it was very stressful. But in any event, we ended up jumping onto a C-5A Galaxy, which is the 2nd largest aircraft in the world. And for those of you folks who have any interest in that, there's 5 decks in the plane. The bottom deck alone will hold 8 Greyhound buses side by side. Flight was 17 hours. We went into Saudi Arabia. And my tour of duty in the desert was a difficult one. 41 days of uninterrupted bombing. Hussein swore it would take the U.S. ground forces 6 months to get through the breach from Saudi Arabia into Iraq, which is basically 60 feet of sand off the desert floor, littered with booby traps on the other side. It actually took us 17 minutes to break through, but the carnage was inexplicable. So at 23 years old, and thankfully I was old enough so it didn't become who I was, just something that I had experienced, but it really did spin me on a dime. While I was in the desert, I flipped a Humvee. For 3 hours, I was stranded. And for the first time in my life, and this is where things changed for me, I felt alone. I actually felt alone. And when I finally got swooped out of there by an American chopper, I made a promise to myself, not if, but when I finally get home, I'm going to, chase my lifelong dream and become a writer. Return home, suffering from PTSD, but I did keep that promise. And for the last, 3 decades, I've written 17 books. I have 7 which are national bestsellers. The funny part is my background in law enforcement and the military, I'm actually known for writing tearjerkers, male perspective to a female audience. And I endeavor to try to, produce 1 novel a year. So today I'm here to present the menu. It was the winner of the 2020 New England Book Festival, which I'm really proud about. While most of my novels take 6 to 9 months to write, it took me almost 8 years to develop this book. I really had to get it right. Not a religious man, but I'm very spiritual, and I believe that we're all connected. Not one of us is ever alone, not ever. And this comes from the desert, and this is the underpinning message with all the novels that I write. Basically, I raised 4 children. Whenever we discussed the fears of death, I knew that I wanted to write a story to quell those worries. The menu is actually that story. Premise was simple. Most people believe in some sort of afterlife, but what if they've also considered that their soul or their spirit might have existed before they ever came into this world? And what if they'd been able to actually pick their life, gender, name, purpose, all of it from a menu? And that was kind of like the premise of the book. But it took me a long time to develop it because, 10 years ago, and everybody who's a writer here today knows that we continue to work on our craft, right? It's really, really important to get better and stronger. I could have put it out 10 years ago. I don't think it would have been the same book. I really, really wanted to hone my skills. So brief synopsis, it's a soul, awakening novel that tackles love, faith, and family. During our protagonist Finn Reed's romantic quest, he discovers that even through great suffering and loss, he is never alone, not ever, and that we are all eternally connected. Blessed with a high emotional IQ, Finn enters the world with the promise of finding his soulmate. With heaven's memories erased, his romantic quest teaches him that the heart often sees clearer than the eyes, and that not everyone has ordered the same items from the menu. Evidence that love stories come in many different forms, the menu is a spiritual journey involving more than just one man and one woman. It's a modern day tale that reaches far beyond the boundaries of reason. We received a lot of great endorsements for this book. One of them came from John Lansing, who's a best-selling author, and he wrote, "If you like The Shack, then the menu is a must-read." What I'd like to do is read the first page and a half of the book. The opener, again, is something I spent a lot of time on, and it kind of prefaces the entire ride as we go through. So if I may. It was eternal dawn. 2 silhouettes stood in the soft light of a cloud. Through the veil of fog, the taller shadow handed the other a thin book and patted him on the shoulder. The golden embossed burgundy cover was the approximate size of a menu. Amid the faint sound of birds chirping and the whistling wind, the silhouettes remained faceless. Gently and lovingly, God wrapped his arm around Finn's shoulder. "This is your life. Order whatever you wish, but keep in mind, whatever you choose to taste, you have to finish," he told Finn before sending him into the world. Nodding anxiously, Finn started flipping through the menu. As he read, God continued in a serious whisper, "And you should also know that others have made their own choices." There was a pause. "Choices that are different from those you'll pick." "I understand," Finn replied, though there was no way he ever could. As he scanned all the possibilities within the giant menu, his excitement took over. "Whatever I wish?" he asked. The tall silhouette nodded, "Yes. I want the love of family and friends," Finn read from the menu. "That's fine," God interrupted. "But first, your gender." "Huh? I don't follow you." "The spirit has no gender, but on Earth you must be either a man or a woman. Which will it be?" "A man," Finn quickly announced. "I want to be a good man." He nodded in confirmation. "A good man," God echoed, returning the nod. "That's a wonderful start." "I love poetry," Finn hurried, "and I'd also like to create or design things, God smiled. "I've also loved the act of creation myself." "And it's important that I know compassion," Finn added. "It's yours, but not before experiencing pain and suffering," God answered. Glancing up at his father, Finn gave it some thought. "Sure, I'll accept pain and suffering for compassion." God nodded. "I also wish to have commitment and wisdom and good choices, Finn, but not before conquering trials and tribulations." Finn looked up from the menu again. "And courage?" he asked. "After overcoming fear." "Honor, once you have faced shame." "Success?" Finn asked. "Much failure," God answered. Finn stared at his master before closing the book and handing it back. "I can't have any of the good without the bad, can I?" "Sure, it's called love, and no matter what you do, I'll always love you," God promised. Pretty clever design, don't you think? And that kind of sets the tale for, he basically says, "You're not going to remember any of this until you come home to me." And really, this was me trying to teach my kids, don't fear death. I mean, you came from a place, you don't remember it, you weren't afraid of it. Don't be afraid of going back, right? We're much bigger than the meat that we walk around in, right? I'm a true believer in the spirit. The cool part is this book wasn't written to be a religious text. It's not something that it's a real universal message. God is a really cool character, has a great sense of humor in the book. But again, it's all about connecting us, and especially in today's, in recent events, right? It's a lot better to unify people than to divide them. So the menu is, on Amazon. You can find it in ebook or paperback. And I'm over the moon that this novel has been selected as Pulpwood Queen's December 2021 Book of the Month. So I cannot wait for that. And Kathy, I truly am grateful to you for all the hard work.
Oh, thank you so much. Picking the books is the easiest part for me. This Zoom thing is hard, really hard,
Right.
because everybody's emailing me.
Right.
How do I get on? So
Yeah.
Anyway, Echo, Jamie Ford is trying to get the program. I sent it to him, but if you can, he's on Facebook. So he's
Okay. I will
okay.
do my best.
Okay.
And
But anyway,
if you can forward those emails to me real quickly.
if as soon as I get done with this and introduce the next author, I will. Anyway, I wanted to say, Stephen, your story was just so different. I read a lot of books. I've been doing this 21 years, and I look for things that not only tell a story that is one that I've not heard before, but is told in such a way that it's great for book club discussion, which is gonna be. But your
Awesome.
voice, this is the biggest thrill for me, because I've never met you in person yet.
Right.
And so listening to your voice has just got me all excited. I love the fact that we're all from all over the country.
Right.
We've got an author coming in from France. We've got authors coming in from British Columbia and Ontario.
Wow.
And Spain. It's amazing how
Great.
this little book club that I started with 6 complete strangers, and we met in tents in the front yard of my little house out in the woods, has evolved into the largest international book club in the world.
So awesome.
I feel like and I feel more spiritual than religious myself.
Right.
But I think your book has just been placed in front of us at just the right time.
Thank you.
All of yours have. I mean, each one of your stories, and this is the one thing I want to say before we, move on, is that it is so important to hear the author. And we're the only book club in the world that brings our author into the conversation. And I think that is why Girlfriend Weekend and our book club convention has such value, is because when you hear the authors talk, like Ilene and Joy and all of you guys that are speaking today, I'm all of a sudden just more engrossed. I just can't wait to read the book. Which reminds me, everybody go to mainstreetreads.com, because she's not only selling all our books for us, now she's going to sell them all year. And they're going to be autographed. If you guys send autographed book plates to her, I'll be posting more on that, so you can go to the bookstore. And so, Stephen, here you are a best-selling author, but this book was the first I'd heard of your books. I think that's another big point of our book club, is we're connecting people from all over that usually are well-known in the area that they're in.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I can't remember exactly how I got your book, but I'm thankful that I did. But is there anything you want to say to all the people from all over the country on that we don't know about you, that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think it's important for authors to be approachable and relatable. And so I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. If you want to reach out and friend me, please do. I'd love to talk about process with other authors, right? So I just, it's an honor to be here this week, and I really truly mean that. And it's so important to network and to connect with other people, and for me to turn my readership onto your work as well.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here, and you've got your email at the bottom of your, see where his name is? There's emails there, so you might want to jot that down. But since he brought that up, I'm going to tell you, last year we started our online book club. We've always been meeting in person. Was that a timely thing or what? Okay, so you all, every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock on the International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys Book Club Reading Nation, I post the Zoom links. Those are all recorded and put on my Kathy L. Murphy channel on YouTube for you guys to watch over and over and share with your book club and have watch parties. So I'm very excited about that. But I think this is a really appropriate time to say that I'm starting a Pulpwood Queen Writers Club. And I hope all of you guys will come on board and mentor to other writers and share aspects of writing like David Valdez did earlier this morning. So that's coming right away. And I'm going to do a little poll to find out when the best time that would be to meet. Weekends, weeknights. Weeknights are getting pretty crazy these days, but I'll be going on to that. So thank you, Stephen. We'll be talking more tonight.
Thank you.
As I introduce all the authors at the Slumber Party tonight. We're having 3 nights of slumber parties. You all want to be there because I'm going to introduce all the authors and show your books and get everybody so they recognize your faces, because so many of you are new to me. We are running a little early, but I'm going to jump on and we're going to go to Isla Morley, where are you there, Isla? Is it Isla or Isla? I'm not seeing her. Is she not there? Okay.
No, I
She's
couldn't
not
find
there
her either.
yet.
Kathy,
Uh-huh.
this is RJ Lee.
Yes, RJ.
I wanted to say to Stephen that he just summed up my belief system entirely
Yay.
Wow.
with
Thank
his
you.
book. I can't wait to read it and give it to friends for Christmas and everything.
Thank you,
That's what
sir.
I believe, just what he said.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I
I'd like
second
to
that
ask-
I
motion.
can't wait to read the whole thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask,
Wonderful to meet you,
Raise
Stephen.
your hand
Wonderful.
if you want to talk and okay, Claire.
Wonderful to meet you, Stephen. What a pleasure and a joy. God bless you.
That's a mutual thing. Thank you very much.
All right.
Kathleen's next. She's got her hand up. Are you on mute, Kathleen?
Stephen,
Yes.
I am an old military wife, fighter pilot's wife, and a military mama who sent a son to war. I respect you for your service.
Thank you.
And my husband went over to the Gulf, what was it, 90, 91.
Right.
I respect you for that and your law enforcement background. And I also respect you because you're a man's man, but you're not afraid to
Right.
write about the sensitive side. And I love your accent and I just respect
Thank
you.
you.
We
Thank
all
you.
do.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Okay, I think Joe was first, then we'll come to you, Janet. Joe?
hi, Stephen.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, I'm an old military medic. I was a Navy corpsman, and some
Awesome.
years ago, I love Mitch Albom's writing, and several
Me too.
years ago, I read that skinny little book called The 5 People You Meet.
Meet in heaven.
yeah.
Sure.
And it tied together so many things that happened to me as a corpsman that I have carried through the rest of my life. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, I bet he's read The 5 People You Meet.
Oh, yeah. I love Mitch Albom. He's one of my favorites.
So great. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I guess I'm next. We started chatting yesterday on Facebook because I got a brother in Harvard, Mass. I have old New England roots and stuff like that. The interesting thing too, I have a military connection. I've never been a military brat, but when I went out to Hawaii, that's where I met my husband. He was actually on his way to Australia. He never got very far, but he had been in Vietnam 66, 67.
Wow.
And that was a piece of my life. I'm still trying. He passed away, unfortunately, 19 years ago. And they said he died of Vietnam. He had a good life. He went to school and got a geology degree. But I'm still looking for where he was. All I know from his letters, he was at Landing Zone, LZ Sharon. And that's sort of like my next little quest is to find out more about First Cav. And
Yeah, I may be able to help you, Janet. I have some friends, so we can, I might be able to help you to do the research, see if we can find them.
yeah, I have
Find
his
out where he did.
papers and all that. So.
Yeah, perfect. Let's talk.
Making the connections.
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Anybody else have another comment? Okay, well, we're going to go. Oh, yes, TK. TK down the corner.
Thanks. Joe, your book sounds wonderful, and I love the way you made God a character. And I have 2 historical novels based loosely on biblical stories about unnamed women.
Okay.
And I encountered a lot of resistance or difficulty marketing because of the religious element or the perception. Even though I'm a humanist and my book kind of reflects that, there's either perception that it's religious and turns people off, or there's a perception that it's not religious enough and turns people off. And I'm just wondering how you dealt with that, or if you've dealt with it.
Well, I'm being sincere when I say this. I wrote this book for my children, right? If people love it, I'm grateful. If people don't love it, you know what I mean? And I mean that sincerely. Like, the book came from my heart. It's something that I hope my grandchildren's grandchildren will read. A lot of people will not connect with it because they're on one side or the other. I mean, much like politics today. For me, I'm a storyteller. I told a story. I'm not trying to spin any religious beliefs here. If people don't want to read it, they don't need to read it, right? But for those that have read it, it's really helped me to connect with them on a much deeper level. And I'm grateful. I feel blessed for having that gift.
Thank you for that answer.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Kathy, can I say something?
Yes, Eileen, jump in.
Stephen, that I am just so impressed that you wrote it for your children, and it's something that we do need to teach our children how to deal with death when they lose someone they love.
Right.
And I am going to read your book. If you said it's like the shack, and I loved that. So it's thank you very much for writing that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Kathy.
Yes, Betty Koval.
Yes, I wanted to ask all of you authors, but especially you, Stephen, don't you think that the books that come from the heart are the most successful after all?
Oh, absolutely.
I just find them to be the most heartwarming and the ones I love the best.
No, absolutely. I believe that. And I can actually tell when I read something. I read a lot of work, and I read a lot of unpublished work. When somebody really comes from, that bone marrow, right? You can feel it. It moves you. It's not just something that makes you think, it makes you feel as well. I'll just finish with this. I don't want to take up anybody else's time, but I made a conscious decision when I published this book. I actually self-published it for the first time. I created my own little press, this and that, because I didn't want to haggle with, the Christian book market. Is it commercial enough? I wanted this to be as pure as it could be for my kids. So I put it out that way. There's a lot of stuff that I publish, which I hope has commercial value, bring some money under my roof. This is not one of those books. I've given away more of these books than I have sold them because I believe in the message.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh boy, that's an even better part of the story. Yay!
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Well, don't forget, tonight we're having this party. So I still don't see Isla Morley on board yet. So what we'll do is we'll come back to her. But is Jess Montgomery, are you here? Did I not? I don't see you either.
Yeah, she's here.
Oh, yay. Okay, Jess, let's jump in and give you your 15 minutes now, if you don't mind. I'm trying to find you. I'm looking for you. I don't speak up.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. Yay.
Move this light a little bit.
There, that's better. Thank you, Jess.
Sure.
Okay, well, you are not only a first-time Pulpwood Queen author, a second-time Pulpwood Queen author, but you're going to be a third-time Pulpwood Queen author. And what everybody needs to know here is, you're fairly new to our organization, but you won last year Book of the Year.
I did. It was such an honor. And thank you for that.
Thank you. So we want to hear about this trilogy and your new book coming up that follows the Hollows, which the first one was the Widows. Mm-hmm. And you've got quite a story. So go ahead.
Oh, I will. And I do want everyone to know that I may be fairly new, but I have on my sparkly headband and my hot pink turtleneck. So I'm
Good.
doing my best to fit into this community that is warm and embracing. So, yeah, the kinship series is inspired by the true first female sheriff in Ohio, a woman named Maud Collins, who became sheriff in 1925 after her husband was killed in the line of duty. And then she became sheriff in her own right. And the next female sheriff in Ohio was in 1976. And I've recently learned that the very next female sheriff in Ohio was in like 2005. And with this past election, we've gotten our 4th female sheriff in the state of Ohio. So still really super unusual to have a female sheriff. Lots of deputy sheriffs and female police officers, but very unusual. And the first book introduces Lily Ross, who's my sheriff, inspired by the real life Maud Collins. And her husband dies in the line of duty, and she joins forces with a union organizer and an old friend of her husband's, Marvina, to find out what happened. And in the Hollows, Lily joins forces with a close childhood friend of hers named Hildy to investigate the death of a woman who they don't know her identity at first. She's not from the area. And in so doing, they uncover a cell of the WKKK, which was a true organization in the 20s. It's the women's KKK. And so basically Lily gets to deal with the terror that comes from having that organization in her county, and some pretty horrific things that follow on. The third book that's coming out in March 9th is called The Stills. And in the first 2 books, Prohibition, obviously since it's in the 20s, is in the background. And so in The Stills, I bring it to the foreground. And, obviously the word stills means a still where you can brew moonshine. But it also evokes the notion of those moments when we can go still and kind of tap into what's happening in our hearts and our souls and find those still moments when we connect with what's most true for us. And in this book, it's narrated, each book is narrated by Lily and another character. It's called the Kinship series. So kinship means not just the name of the town, but the notion of people being in kinship with one another. And Lily's fellow narrator in The Stills isn't someone she's close to. It's a woman who's been a very minor character in the first 2 books, a woman named Fiona. But by this 3rd book, Fiona has married George Vogel, and he's inspired by the true life George Remus, who is a big time bootlegger out of Cincinnati, a gangster. The Bourbon King is a book that explores his true biography. He was quite the, he's not as famous as other gangsters from that era, but he's pretty scary. So in my book, Fiona has married my fictional version of him, and they're kind of invading this quiet Appalachian area of Ohio and bringing his crime into the area. And so Lily gets to deal with that and set right some wrongs that happened in the first book. And I'm currently working on the 4th book. So that's where I stand in the series. I don't know, are we allowed to get questions either typed in the chat or? Oh, somebody posted, thank you, my website and the 3 books. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, Mandy.
Yes, we can ask questions. Raise your hand and I will make a note of who wants to. Scott, are you raising your hand or are you just suggesting something?
I was wondering the same thing.
He's on
Yes,
mute.
I'm raising my hand.
Oh, you're raising your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, yes, I was reaching to unmute myself so I could ask a question.
Aha, okay.
So my question is, I've written several of my books now with various points of view. Tell me about your experience, how much you enjoy, or is it difficult for you to jump back and forth, write from different characters' points of views, especially as apparently it changes consistently through the course of your book. You got one person, right, who's in all of them, but then you got different people in the others. Talk about what that's like for you.
Okay, that's a great question. Yeah, when I first started writing The Widows, I thought it was just going to be from Lily's point of view. And then I realized she just wouldn't know enough to figure this out by herself.
Right.
And that if I had her go find that information, it would be an awful lot of, it would be very dry. So I thought it was more exciting to have it told from the point of view of these two women who start out not as friends and then eventually become friends. Because like I said, in the first book, Marvina was a childhood friend and at one point lover of Lily's husband. And Lily is not aware of all this until she meets Marvina. To be fair to my character Daniel, he was faithful to Lily, but nevertheless, it was not easy for Lily at first. And so it was interesting to have these two like very different points of view, but investigating the murder of this same man that they had different relationships with. And then it just sort of occurred to me, you know, this is about community. It's about the tension. The series is really in some ways about the tension between individuals and community, and what that can be in a positive way and what that can be in a challenging way. So I thought, well, why not have it, you know, Lily's the heart of the series and the heart of the community. So why not in the next book have her, you know, share the narration with, you know, her best friend, and then this woman who's not her friend. And then in book 4, it's her and her mother, which I have to say, as the mother of 2 adult daughters, I'm having a lot of fun taking on the mom's point of view as well as Lily's point of view. And it is a bit challenging because that means that each book, Lily's voice is pretty consistent. Her view on the world is consistent, but the fun and the challenge for me, for each book, and hopefully for readers too, is that the alternate narrator, I really have to like figure out who that person is each time. And then of course there's the trickiness of making a plot work in an unforced way that's going back and forth between the two characters. So that can be a bit of a challenge. But I'm also a writer who does a lot of planning ahead of time. You know, I don't map it out chapter by chapter, but by the time I'm writing, I know the arc of the story and my 2 narrators and where this is all going to go. So that actually really helps. I will also say I don't enjoy the drafting part. I really enjoy the planning part, and I really enjoy the rewriting part, but I do not enjoy the drafting part. It's like slogging through a swamp. But I get there eventually because I tell myself you can't revise something you haven't written. So
right.
Thank you for your question.
Anybody who have a question? Oh, go ahead, Scott. Keep going.
Oh no, I just said thank you. Thank you for that.
I hope that helped.
Yes, Janet, did you have your hand raised? No.
I think I was waving my hand around, but I got excited or something.
Guys,
no, actually, I do, right.
If you have a question, does anybody else have one for Jess? Okay. Well, we're very excited, and what you all don't know, that she's going to be giving out the book of the year tonight. Not tonight, Saturday at the awards presentation. So, and I'll get with you sometime between now and then to talk to you about it.
Okay.
But I'm very excited about both my bonus book of the year, Michael Ferris Smith, and Jess Montgomery and Jonathan Hote are all there to give the awards that all have won the awards last year, which how cool is that? I mean, that never happens, you all. And I think it's going to be really great. So, and then there's going to be some other exciting things. You don't want to miss the award things. The one thing I want to share about the Pulpwood Queen weekend is that this is a participatory event. I want everybody to participate in all the events, because can you already tell that if you hadn't come on here, what you would have missed? Yes, right? This is probably the best networking place in the world to connect authors to authors, authors to readers, readers to authors, and readers to readers. So I thank you all for joining. There she is. Okay. Are you there? Yes, she is. Okay. I just saw Isla Morley just signed in. Once she's on the camera, I'm going to bring her on board. Thank you, Jess, and we'll be talking more soon tonight. I'm looking to see where I see her, trying to find her in all these faces. I know I just let her in. Does anybody see Isla Morley? I can't find her. There you are! You made it. Are you ready to go on?
Sorry, what did you say?
Are you ready to go on and do your talk?
Yes, I am. I'm just going to adjust this brightness over here. If you just give me a minute.
Okay, sure. Anybody have any questions while she's getting set up about any of the event that you may not understand? We had a wonderful Zoom meeting with 60 of the authors on board that were, and I thought I had answered all the questions. Obviously not. So, you know, this is our first year to do this virtual online event. So bear with me. I've got poor Echo and Douglas Thompson and Mandy Haynes frantically working behind the scenes, trying to get everybody up to par and getting online and getting the right link to get in. So are you ready to go now?
Yes.
How do you pronounce your first name?
Isla. It's a silent S.
Isla, there's no S.
Well, there's an S, but my grandmother spelled it the old Scottish way, and I've had to explain it ever since.
All right, Isla, love the name and love your books. I loved her books so much, I picked 2 of them. 2. So I'm going to show them now. We've got The Last Blue. I'm going to go back over here on this page so I can see, so you can see it. The Last Blue, fabulous cover. It's a novel, and I just love the way they did the tree and the silhouette. And then the other book that I picked, and she sent me more. I mean, we're going to have her more in the picture, but the other book is Come Sunday. It's won an award. So we're going to have you talk about both books at this time, Isla, and I'm thankful that you're here. And I have with me, she's off camera, but I have with me Barbara Dean, who is a Pulpwood Queen that runs all the behind the scenes mailings, which is a tremendous, and she's giving me a look like, no, I'm not going to go on camera, but she's listening to all of you and she's absolutely amazed. So, but anyway, right now I'm going to turn it over to Isla. So Isla, go ahead.
Oh, well, hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I know that this is a bit like author speed dating. You've been here for some talks, and I don't know if Kathy has scheduled potty breaks for you guys. So I'm not going to take offense if you all just go dark for a moment and go and take care of business, but I'm just delighted to have been invited to join you, and thanks for tuning in. Some of you aren't wearing your jammies. I am. Okay, hi Debbie, good for you. And you know, this is standard ensemble for an author, so I just felt like I could slip right into this role, except the tiara is new and these little dangly things, so I'm feeling quite special to be here. And hello to my other fellow authors. I don't ever get to really commune with other authors, so bless you for being here. And what I think we'll do, if you've got any questions for me, put them in the chat section, and I'll leave some time just in case I need to respond to anybody's questions. But we'll start with The Last Blue, and this is my most recent novel. It came out in May last year, which feels like 10 years ago in pandemic time. And it is a story inspired by a non-fictional account. It tells about a woman who has been isolated. We all know what that's like, right? Being quarantined and isolated. She's been isolated her whole life. Deep in the Appalachian wilderness in the early part of the 1900s. She's isolated on account of her blue skin. And she lives with her brother, who's also blue-skinned, as well as the rest of her small family at the back of this holler. And at a time of rising tension between her family and the neighboring townsfolk of a fictionalized town called Chance, at a time of this rising tension, come these two documentarians, a journalist and a photographer, who work for the Works Progress Administration and have been tasked by President Roosevelt to come to that area, which in 1937, very little was known about that area, and to document what they find. And they expect to be documenting the stories of the Hill people, mostly poor people, about whom there were a lot of stereotypes. And this is all part of Roosevelt's plan to kind of create sympathies towards the plight of coal miners and people fleeing the Dust Bowl to get his New Deal going. But as soon as they arrive in town, they catch wind of this mysterious, strange family. It's hinted that they are self-quarantining and they're just warned to stay away. And like two good reporters, they quickly discover they've got a nose for a story, and they take off in search of this family in hope for a headline story that will get them off the government dime and back into big editorial publishing offices in Cincinnati or New York. So that's the setup. And as I said, it's based on the true life story of the Blue Fugates of Troublesome Creek. And I had never even heard about them when I first came across this story. I saw this what it looked like an old daguerreotype photograph that had been hand painted, and I'm going to hold it up for you. And as you can see, several of the family members are blue, and so I thought, oh, for sure this is clickbait. You know, it's National Enquirer stuff. I couldn't be bothered, except, I was in the middle of revising my previous novel and I was procrastinating. So click away I did. And I found out that they are actually, the photograph, it's not a photograph, it's a painting, but it was commissioned by a science journal who tasked a woman by the name of Kathy Trost to write what she could about this family that lived 200 years ago. And it was a short article that she wrote, about 4 or 5 pages, in which she documents the beginnings of what we know of the Blue Fugates of Troublesome Creek. And it starts with a guy by the name of Martin Fugate. She got some facts right, but some of them are wrong. For example, she thought that he had come over from France as a stowaway and immigrated to that region, and that's not the case. He moved there with his brother and his family, and unbeknownst to him, he was carrying this recessive gene that when he met and fell in love with and finally married a fair-skinned, red-headed woman, when they started having children, about half of them started coming out blue. And of course, one can imagine the shock. There's very little documenting how this family dealt with these extraordinary circumstances, or what even the effect of over generations. But it turned out that this gene then came to the surface, and because there were maybe 3 or 4 families living in isolation together, this family member married that one, and it just kind of eventually turned out that blue people in that particular holler were not uncommon. And I was so struck by this. I went online and researched, and by then very little was known about it. Of course, the book Woman of Troublesome Creek hadn't been written. I suspect that Kim Richardson was, you know, inspired by the same events, and we were writing the same story at the same time. But what struck me most about this particular story was an anecdote that the journalist had written for the Science Journal. She said, she related, one of these journalists had gone to speak to somebody who had been married to a blue woman who had long since died. And, you know, he gave an amiable interview. And, but when the interviewer brought up the subject about blue, knowing that his wife, by all accounts, was bluer than Lake Louise, unmistakably, shockingly blue, the widower clammed up. And he wouldn't answer that question. And then Kathy goes on to outline other matters and other people who were interviewed. But that image of this widower, this old man who was living in this cabin that he had built with his own hands, you know, her grave was a stone's throw away. He refused to move even as he got older and needed care. All of this was just so fresh and alive to me and so compelling. And I knew then that I wanted to write about the story, but I wanted to write, I wanted to develop it as a love story alongside what it would be like to have been born blue and very obviously a target of superstition and prejudice, perhaps hatred, perhaps violence. So that's what launched this, what turned out to be a 5-year writing endeavor. One of the reasons that it took me so long to write this novel, as opposed to my first novel, which took half the time, was that in the midst of this, I connected for the first time with my biological family. So 50 years after I was put up for adoption, I found my biological father. My birth mother had died when she was in her early 50s. And it turns out that I have 6 brothers and sisters. And so while writing this novel, all of a sudden I am corresponding with these strangers that I'm related to who suddenly feel like my tribe. And I traveled back to South Africa several times, the first time to meet them all. And I was having that falling in love experience. I fell in love with each one of them. And I had this expanded understanding of what family meant, and a sense of belonging, and a sharpening of my identity. So while all these things were happening to me personally, I'm writing a story about a woman and who is struggling with her identity, who will ultimately claim her identity as someone beyond just being blue, beyond how other people see her. And also, it's a story that examines where we belong. The story takes place, in the remotest recess of the Appalachian wilderness, where someone from Cincinnati finds himself, a photographer who's used to keeping others at lens distance, now is finding connection in the most unlikely place, and with someone with whom he shouldn't be able to identify at all. So, you know how they say everything is material for writers. And although I didn't consciously try and knit that into the story, when I look back now, I see that, of course, all of those themes are going to be infused in the story. Either that, or this is just an excuse for saying that it took me too long to write this book. Yeah, so, okay. I think that to segue into the next book that I want to talk to you about, I'll just say that you're putting up very well with my accent. You can hear that I'm from far away, and the country of my birth is South Africa. I was born right during the midst of apartheid, at a time where the country was deeply divided along racial lines, but also within the culture to which I belong, there were extreme tensions between two different language groups. And I lived there and I was educated there and all my family was there. And in 1994, after South Africa had its first free election and it elected Nelson Mandela as the president of the country, I was making a speech saying that I would never leave South Africa, that this was one of those pivotal moments in history where you're not just a bystander, but just by the very nature of you being present there, you're going to be changed and you're going to make some kind of difference. Even though it was a time of great unrest and a lot of people were afraid that there would be a civil war, I wanted to stay and be a part of that exciting time. And like the week after I was making the speech, I met an American and fell head over heels in love and got married 5 minutes later, it seemed. And so that's how I ended up as a 26-year-old bride, moving from South Africa, the tippy toe of the African continent, to Southern California. And in South Africa, I had been an editor of a couple of magazines. One was a scuba diving magazine and the other one was a men's lifestyle magazine, kind of like a young man's GQ. And I was the editor of that. And because we were short-staffed, it was a startup magazine, I wore many hats, none of them were tiaras. And I was required to write under the pseudonym. You know, I was, I don't even remember all of my made-up names, but I was various guys, you know, and I was writing sex advice to 24-year-olds. And, you know, when I moved, I just thought, I'm done with writing. That is so soul destroying, you know, it just hollows you out. I don't want to be a part of it. And so when I moved to Southern California, I became involved in nonprofit work, which I did for a number of years, maybe a decade. And we were living in Hawaii. My husband's work took him to Hawaii. So we were living in Honolulu and we had fallen on hard times. And we had we had mounting debt. My husband had just had a traumatic brain injury and had brain surgery. I didn't know if I was ever going to get back the man who I married. We had a little baby daughter, and you know how things, every bad thing starts to stack up. And so seeing my check balance dwindle down into the red, and just not knowing how I was going to survive and if my husband was ever going to recover. To make matters worse, this huge monsoon storm came over the islands, and it just changed the ceiling into mush. We had such a leaky roof, and I just thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for the roof to be replaced? And so that night I went to bed and I was so troubled. And I was lying there, and all of a sudden, this figment of my imagination kind of materialized next to my bed. And that had never happened before. And I could see her. She had a funeral bulletin in her hand. This kind of awareness came to me that the person that she had just buried was her young daughter who had been killed in a freak car accident while she was being watched by the babysitter who was a best friend. And the image was so startling and so unlike anything I've ever experienced. But before I could even kind of rationalize what was happening, the scene changed, and all of a sudden she was in a rondavel. You know those round African houses with the thatched roofs? So that's a rondavel, and she was in there and feeling out of place, but trying to make sense of something. And I didn't know what, but while she's kind of taking in the atmosphere, a little boy came to the doorway and asked for help. And I heard her say hesitantly, "I can't help you." And then she paused and she said, "Come back tomorrow and ask me then." And to me, that just spoke of hope after trauma. It spoke of healing, and it spoke of transformation. And so I elbowed my husband awake, related the story to him, and he kind of grumpily said, "You should write that down." The next day I started to write the very first scene that I told you about. And before I could ever get to the rondavel, another scene kind of presented itself. And I sat at a keyboard with my eyes closed. So I wrote most of that novel, at least the first draft, kind of blind, literally with my eyes closed, because the story was just kind of unfolding. And it felt almost as if I had stuck my hand into like a current, like a river or something, just streaming with images above my head. And this, I don't know, this story just kind of came down. And about 8 months into writing this, I realized what I was doing was I wasn't just jotting down an idea. I was in fact writing a novel. And I had no idea, obviously, how to do that. I think the worst thing that we can do when we need help is to go to the internet for guidance, because all the horror stories are the first thing that pop up. You know, if you've ever tried to self-diagnose your headache, you know, it's always like a brain aneurysm that comes up. And so the internet just was like blaring this, "Do not proceed any further, stop, go back. This is a bad idea." Just like so many writers lined up to tell me about the number of rejections they received. And, you know, I'm not tough-skinned. I don't take rejection easily. So I I just decided I was not going to pursue that further. I got a couple of books out the library, and I persisted. I just kept going. And when we moved to California, my husband's a retired Methodist minister. He's assigned to this Methodist church, and we lived in the parsonage right next door. And I felt like the fishbowl wife, you know. And I was trying to finish this novel. And so what I did was I just moved all these pulpit robes out of this one closet, and I put my desk in the closet, and I wrote in secret. So nobody knew besides my husband that I was writing this novel. And it took me just over 2.5 years to complete it. And then I did research on how to find an agent. You know, I had his top 10 dream list, completely unrealistic, you know, just going for the, you know, the star-studded agents. But number 9 on my list came back the next day with an email. She was the only one that wanted an email submission. The rest was like, remember snail mail? Remember that little cute thing you did when you put things in an envelope and you licked a stick? That's what I did. So in short order, she said, look, let me read your manuscript. I want an exclusive read, and I promise to get back to you shortly. Within days, she came back, and she called me and she said, I have to be your agent, and I know exactly how to sell this novel. This was come Sunday. And so she said she was going to send it out to a number of editors that she knew, and we would wait and see. Well, because I knew that this was a lengthy process and there were going to be lots of rejections, I just expected to hear something, you know, 3 months down the line. But the next day, somebody, the editor of Algonquin, called and said he was going to buy wanted to buy the manuscript. And that week we got 7 offers, and it went to auction. Yeah, and so that was kind of the fairy tale moment. We sold the manuscript to Farrar, Straus and Giroux, and my agent told me they were the Tiffany of book publishers, so I was very pleased to do that. The book came out in 2009, and it tells the story of forgiveness and redemption, how that works. To circle back to South Africa, more and more I realize how my upbringing shapes the kind of stories I tell and the kinds of stories I'm attracted to. I've witnessed acts of... You guys have cats? I've witnessed stories of bigotry and racism and the cruelty right up close and personal. I know what it's like to experience prejudice on all kinds of levels. I've seen it from a privileged person's point of view. I've been rebuked for pushing against the status quo, but I also know what it's like, the treachery of being in a position of privilege and remaining silent out of fear, or not wanting to rock the boat, or create divisions in my own family. I know what that's like, and I'm ashamed of those times. And perhaps all of that gets folded into the novel too, and gets folded into the way I tell the story. And I think I'll just say this. Everybody predicted South Africa would be a bloodbath. And it wasn't. It was a time of reconciliation and coming together. It was a time of mutual forgiveness and accountability and healing. And most of all, what it taught me is the redemptive power of hope. That as long as we can hold on to hope, change is possible. So that, if you read any of my books, that is going to come through. All my books are about the same thing, just told in different ways. They're about unimaginable circumstances, challenges, difficulties, traumas, and how we are so resilient. We found a way to claw our way back to a sense of hope and the resulting sense of meaning and the realization actually that we're all in this together.
I'm so inspired. And I've still got another one to read of yours. I mean, I had like over 600 and some books sent to me to pick my 12 books from. And part of the reason that, you know, we've always been an international book club. We've always been global and diverse, but I thought nobody knows that. So I put the international on the front of our book club because we are. And I said, we're going to go more global, more diverse. And so when I got to your books, I said, I can't pick which one I want to pick. They're both great. I just didn't get a chance to get to the third one. So I picked both of them. So we've got, I think one of yours is a book of the month and one is a international book. So I juggle around a lot to work everybody in that I think have stories that need to be told. So I want everybody to know here that this invitation of having you is after much thought and consideration and trying to be as diverse and global and have both men and women. People go, oh, you read women's fiction. I go, no, we read everything by both men and women and in all genres. So I'm really excited that you're here. And I hope you'll join us tonight because we're going to introduce all the authors at our gathering. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to? Okay, Susan Peterson has joined us from Sue's Reading Neighborhood, my blogging friend from San Antonio. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Isla, I'm so thrilled to be talking to you. I'm going to cry. I don't know why. I got goosebumps listening to you talk just now about the last. I don't know why I'm going to cry. Oh, I'm just very moved by everything. But you know how much I love The Last Blue. I love that book, and I wish that everybody would read that book. I know that everybody read the other two books about the blue people. I loved your book, and I haven't read Come Sunday or your other books, but I need to, and I'm going to. But I just want to let you know how touched I was just now and how I had goosebumps listening to you talk about your family and about how that story came to everything. It was just amazing. So I just want to let you know that. And that's all.
It's so wonderful to see you in person because we've just done everything through Facebook and you know, what an amazing time. I keep finding all these blessings in the pandemic. And we all know from our own personal stories that hard times do bring gifts,
Yes.
Even in the midst of suffering. And really, this forum, Kathy, is a gift for us to connect. And Sue,
No, I'm going to cry.
I know.
to have you participate and to, you know, to be here and also for you to offer that book club. You know, The Last Blue was destined to just sink beneath the waves without even making a splash. It came out right after that first shock wave, before we knew that people would even read. Even myself, we all went into this kind of, you know, snapping our purses closed and watching every penny because we didn't know what was going to happen. And it's because of book clubs like yours online. That was the only thing that was available to me. I was able to connect with you and to connect with others. And it was because of that connection that people went out and bought my book.
Yes.
So even though I had the big fancy blockbuster publisher for Come Sunday, it's The Last Blue that is the one that is showing all the others up. you know, and that is a testimony to the devoted readers like you that make those spaces available. Gosh, you've just bailed us all out. So
I'm glad I could help, and truly your book is just beautiful.
Thank
and
you.
everybody, if you haven't read it, everybody should read it. But I'm so glad that we were able to meet and that this was a big part of, I mean, this was in May, so the beginning of the pandemic, and we had no idea what was going on. And yeah, I'm glad we had that too, that we made this connection. And I just got a message from somebody who apparently you gave them my name, so I'll have to check on who that is.
Echo Garrett has she's right next to you, Isla.
Hi, Isla. I was very moved by everything you shared as well. And my burning question is, how is your husband now? Because I went through the exact same thing.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry to hear that.
But he's doing great. My husband has really healed. So I'm hoping I'm going to hear something similar from you.
I'm so glad you brought up that question because I always forget to end my stories on a happy note.
Okay.
He did recover. It was a long recovery. But he did recover, and we've been married 26 years, and our relationship just deepens and becomes more special than that first time we met. Yes, and he's just as crazy and quirky and eccentric as ever.
Same here. So I'm so happy to hear that. And I also discovered I had a half brother who I never knew existed. So I also relate to you on that level. So I was just fascinated by your storytelling, who you are as a person. And like you said, I'm very grateful. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional. Lack of sleep because I've been helping Kathy with this thing. But
we've been up for 2 days.
Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to say thank you for being part of the Pulpwood community. But I also want to say thank you for following those stories that are so important and that connect us on a deep level. And I can't wait to read your books. So
just so you know, Isla, Echo Garrett is an author, but she also is my publisher that I work for as director of acquisitions for Lucid House Publishing. So she knows books, and we all share the same vision on stories. And I knew when I read yours and why I picked 2. And I'm telling you, there's a third one out there. What's the third book? I forgot right now.
It's Above.
Above.
And that's
okay, tell everybody quickly about that because we're all going to want to read it.
Okay, this is inspired by a true story as well. And it is the story of a young woman who is abducted by a survivalist who believes that the world is coming to an end and has prepared an underground abandoned Atlas F missile silo as the place where he keeps her and everything else that he's been accumulating to seed the new world. And it's about her struggle for freedom and the kind of changing idea of what freedom means. When she has a child in captivity, she has to decide whether to create a myth for her son as he grows up in order to make the truth of their circumstances more palatable, or whether she's going to tell him the truth. And she makes her decisions, and the truth reveals itself in kind of a psychological thriller kind of a way. So this book also did very well, and it kind of resonated with a lot of people. So that's one if you want to be kept up at night. Check that one out. Kathy, I have put my details of how, if anybody wants to keep in touch with me, I just did that to you in the chat section. So if you want to share it, I didn't know how to do that. But You can find me on Facebook, everyone. I'm not the most prolific poster. I always get really self-conscious, and but I love to connect with people. I'm also on Instagram. So you can find me there. And if you want to ever write to me, please do. I love that old-fashioned system. And it's just my first and last name, Isla Morley @yahoo.com. So I just encourage you to keep in touch, and maybe there are relationships that develop from this thing. What I've admired from a distance, looking on Facebook, is that some of you have the gift for connecting others, and how these friendships have formed. And it's been inspiring. And I would just love to be the recipient of a new friendship going forward.
You got it. You've got it. And we'll all be reading your books, Isla. We are thrilled. What will happen this year, and I said it a little bit before, but it doesn't end with this weekend. By you coming to be a part of this, I will feature you on my Breathless Bubbles and Books daily blogs, have you as a guest host. We'll get you on our online book club meeting, and all of these things, everything is recorded and put on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel, so my book clubs can have watch parties. And it doesn't matter to me when a book is written. It doesn't matter to me who publishes your book. What matters to me is our theme. It's all about the story, and you're a master storyteller. I've only read 2 books, but I'm hearing the third one, and they're also different, so yes, you will definitely be. And if anybody can't get in touch with her, come to me. I'll find her. I found her this time. So thank you. We're going to go on to our next author. Everybody, big applause. Yay. Everybody, you guys, these are just amazing stories. I love it. So I'm really excited about this, and I've got to tell you about this book that we're going to go back to here. This Richard Schwartz, many years ago, sent me a package with his book. And the problem is I get sent so many books, Richard. I mean, it is so hard. But I had the Jackson, Mississippi Pulpwood Queens just hounding me. You've got to get this book. And I kept working it in. And it wasn't until I had a really incredible conversation with Wendy Carter at this past January's Girlfriend Weekend that I said, okay, we're making this happen. The book is Pearl River Mansion, a novel. It's your story. It's a Southern tale. And I would love to bring you both on so you can talk about the book, okay? Okay.
Hey, I'm Richard Schwartz. I'm an attorney in Jackson, Mississippi. I have my own practice. Been practicing for a lot older than I look old and I am old, but I've been blessed that I have Wendy Carter with me, and she's my Wonder Woman, and she has helped me through the book. She's helped me write it and help do the day-to-day tasks that are necessary to promote the book. And what I'm going to do is have her read an overview of the book, and then we'll kind of discuss what exactly was in the book. So Wendy, take it away.
Okay, I think he wanted me to start with just reading the back of the book because that just gives a little overview. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so this is the copy of the book. Okay.
Beautiful cover.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it says, Detective Jack Kendall and his assistant, Stacy Young, receive a disturbing call that opens the door to a missing persons case that has the missing persons case that has tugged at the heartstrings of Mississippi and the entire nation. Now Jack and Stacy hold the key to the most shocking, complex, and emotional case of their careers, and they are all in. As the only heir of Joan Chandler, Tyler Chandler stands to inherit everything a man could want, including Pearl River Mansion, a 450-acre post-Civil War estate that sits at the end of one of the many fingers of the Pearl River. Tyler's mother makes a game out of controlling people by trading on her wealth, but Tyler refuses her money, which always comes with strings, and struggles to make it on his own, trading instead on his intelligence and exceptional good looks. But he's not as good at the game as his mother is, and he finds himself trapped in a marriage that infuriates his mother. It is a destructive battle of wills, and just when Tyler believes he's winning, fate intercedes. And for the second time in her life, Joan finds a purpose for the alligators that have kept her well away from the water's edge, and the stakes keep rising.
Yeah, so it's a book. One thing that we had, this is our second book. Our first book was Two Dead and Counting. And what we really like is to feel characters, to build the characters. In both books, there's a detective by the name of Jack Kendall who stumbles on to mysteries. This mystery is a 4-year-old who disappears, and there's they're hired to figure out what happened. But it has a lot of twists and that are unexpected, and both books do, that you don't necessarily expect. And it's written in Southern dialect. So the people, the characters do talk in the dialect that you would expect them to do in a plantation setting. And as a result, we hope that we bring the reader into that world. And the characters themselves, and we're getting a lot of 5-star reviews on the characters. Some people hate a character so much that they said they were going to throw the book away. And then they had to pick it up and finish it. But you love or hate these characters, and you learn a lot about them and why they do things. And the way we write the book is we come up with the story, and then we go find Hollywood actors and get their picture. And we make the determination, what would they do in a movie scenario? And so the book is written with the hopes that one day it will become a movie, but it really helps us in developing those characters because we already know a little bit about them. Now we develop them a little bit deeper. And I think you're going to read a little excerpt from the book.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
Where'd you go?
I have it in here.
I'll
somewhere.
sing while she's looking. No, they'll click off if I start singing. Did you
Okay.
lose it?
I think I might have. So while I'm looking for this, I just wanted to say that what really sets this story off is the fact that as the characters are going about their lives, something happens that in a moment of crisis, they make a decision, a bad decision, and that changes everything. So that can happen really to anyone. But when you make a bad decision, then one bad decision leads to another bad decision, and then they really can't go back from there.
And while she's looking for that, what's interesting about the second book and the first book, but especially the second book, it has an ending that you wouldn't suspect. And it ends in a way that you would have never thought of, and it leaves you to ponder sometimes why. And I like to end our books with a little kick and a mystery that you would not expect. And that way you can reflect on everything else that has built up to that moment and reflect the characters. Now, one thing we do in the book, because we have many characters, we have in the front of the book a list of the characters and who they are. So you can follow along. If you had to stop mid-book, you can follow along and catch up with it very easily. We're very lucky, while she's looking that up, we're very lucky that we've been picked for the month of June for the book club. Thank you so much for doing that. And we just recently, last week, we were elected, we were voted for the best book on online, online books as the #1 book for 2020. So we just got that done last week. So we're very proud of the success that it's had and the people who told us about the book and their results, and the first book as well, which is Two Dead and Counting. Did you find it?
No, my cat knocked the book off. I have
We'll
cat
just
too.
find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's easy to do when it's hard to do. When
Yeah,
someone's waiting for
just
it.
read a little excerpt so they have a feel of the language of the book. So you are going to be in a Southern setting in an antebellum home. I've had some people from other states ask me if it was really like that in Mississippi. The answer is no. Okay. So when you do read it, we don't tell you what era it's in, but it's in more of a modern era, but it's still periods of the Old South that you'll see in the story, that the stigma that Old South sometimes has. And so we do like the fact that the people who read it have told us that they're amazed by how we live in Mississippi. It's just not true. So it's fiction, believe it or not. So once you read something, just pick a page. Just pick a page.
Okay, well, it's hard to just I don't know where I'm.
Just start from right here. Chapter 4.
Okay.
Okay.
I wish I could, but I can't get away today, Tyler said. Okay. Tell me you don't want to skinny dip with me in my pool, Pamela teased. Tyler glanced over his shoulder as Sarah struggled to clip a life jacket onto Cody, not 20 feet away. What about Jacob? He's spending the day with a friend. We'll have the whole afternoon to explore one another. If you care for me, you'll find a way. I care, but please don't disappoint me. I've been dreaming about this kiss that you promised me. He looked at his watch. I'll find a way. See you soon then. Cody let out an impatient scream and began to cry. Tyler, can you help me with this? It's twisted. Tyler dropped the phone into his pocket and walked over to where Sarah knelt with Cody at the end of the dock. Stop crying, Cody. Daddy will fix it. He unhooked everything and started over. Thank you, Sarah said. I'll go find Rachel. Tyler quickly clipped Cody's jacket into place. Come on, son. Let's get into the fishing boat so that we can row out to the big boat. I don't want to go in the small boat, Daddy. There's too many crocodilators out there. Tyler grimaced. This was the downside of taking Cody out last night. The river had teemed with alligators, their red, beady eyes shining in the beam of his powerful flashlight. He was surprised to see how many more there were than when he had lived here. Their outing had upset Cody, which wasn't entirely a bad thing. The last thing he wanted was for him to jump into the river. He might make it out in the daylight, but at night, when the gators came out to feed, the chances weren't as good. As it was, people lost pets from the shoreline every year, even in the daytime. We'll wait for Mama, and then I'll row out to the big boat by myself. Then I'll go in the big boat, Cody said. Sarah skipped down from the flagstone stairway to the dock. Guess it's just us today. Joan wants to keep Rachel while we go out. Stay with Cody while I go get the houseboat, Tyler said. He's afraid to get into the fishing boat because of the alligators. I'm surprised he didn't have nightmares. Don't start on me, Sarah. It's probably for the best. We don't want him jumping in. He climbed into the boat and untied it from the dock. Taking up the oars, he rowed the over 100 yards or so before maneuvering around a dense outcropping of cypress sumac trees and over to the boathouse. Why his mother kept the pontoon boat was a mystery. As far as he knew, she hadn't set foot on it since his father died. Nevertheless, Mr. Gibbs took it out on a regular basis and kept it well maintained. A smile tugged at his lips. He had to give it to old Gibbs. Putting up with his mother all these years couldn't have been easy. He rowed the fishing boat up to the side of the metal A-framed houseboat and tied it off. He entered beneath the roof and walked along the side deck, admiring the pontoon vessel. He'd had a lot of fun on this boat during his college years when he'd been free to do as he pleased. He certainly hadn't planned to marry when he did, but Sarah had turned up pregnant, and
good.
now he was tying down with good.
Makes me hungry for grits. So it has a Southern flair. I'm not a big hunter, but there's always some love scenes in both books. And so there's a little steamy areas in it that it's not for kids. In fact, one of the people who put the review on was a 5-star, said, unbelievable book, but it's not for kids because there is some bad parts.
Well, not from the area of any graphic love scenes.
No, it's not graphic.
Nothing actually is really graphic.
I think it's the death parts, or there's several deaths in the book.
There's some murder, and there's a little bit of
It's graphic murder.
neglect. And
It's
some-
graphic murder.
and some child abuse. But what this is about really is a dysfunctional family and what happens when you have a lot of wealth and a person who is used to getting everything they want, and it doesn't matter what it costs to get it, they'll have their way. And about children who are wanting to break free from that and build their own lives, and sometimes what that costs them. So I think one of the great questions that's going to come up in book club meetings when people are talking is really what was going on with Tyler Chandler. And there is a young couple, Tyler and Sarah, and they are the ones that have these two twins. They have twins. They have Sarah and Cody, and they are the young children. And for whatever reason, these parents really favor the boy, and the girl is the one that gets really neglected. But she's the one that actually goes missing. And that is really where the story takes off. It's like, what happened to this girl? And there are so many different twists and turns that go on. It's hard to even really talk about the story because it's one unexpected thing after the other. And I think that readers will really enjoy it because you will think that you know what's going on, and it will absolutely surprise you and turn itself from one direction to the other. And as you go through the story, there will be things that will occur that you will know people who have gone through similar things. And it, in the reviews that people have said, is that it is a roller coaster of emotions from one side to the next. And I hope it's a journey that all of you will really enjoy.
And I think also the ending is going to be controversial, and I think that will be subject to a lot of discussion as to exactly why it ended that way.
Yes.
And I think those are going to be interesting conversations.
Great. Well, we have time for just a little bit of conversation. If anybody wants to ask any questions or make any remarks, raise your hand and I'll look and see if I see anybody who's got their
I'm sorry to have lost.
I see you, Mandy. Okay. What I need to know also for everybody here, what is the best way to get in contact with you if they don't want to ask it on camera and they want to ask you later? How would they reach you, Wendy or Richard?
Wendy, what's
There
our site?
is, you can go, we have a Facebook page under Richard Schwartz Books. He also has Richard Schwartz Books as a website. And you can also find me directly, and I can kind of put that up I'll put it up in the chat in a few minutes so that people can find that. So either way, and I'm sorry I lost the spot that I really wanted to read because it was showing a lot of the manipulation that goes on, but my cat knocked my book off and I didn't have a chance to find
How
it.
many of you have cats jumping on you right now?
I
noticed that Isla did too. That's totally understandable. You'll have other opportunities when we get you on Breathless Bubbles and Books, our daily blogs and the online book club. So just hold that thought, okay?
Awesome.
And we are just a few minutes ahead, but that's all right, you guys, because we have our next featured author here and ready to go. And I want you to meet Mary Helen. Is it Sharif or Sheriff?
Sheriff, like the policeman.
It is Sheriff. I thought, oh, I'm trying to make it fancy. And I thought, but her book is Boop and Eve's Road Trip, a novel. And what you need to know is Mary has this wonderful blog that I am in love with. I've just been following, all my friends like, Eileen Sanchez and Mighty Blaze and Susan Peterson, all these blogs that I'm friends with, I go to you guys and check you out all the time. I just wish more of you had share buttons, but her blog is called Bookish Road Trip. And it's so much fun. I wish I'd come up with the idea of everything that you're doing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me. Oh, I just hit my tiger in the nose. So anyway, Mary, I'm going to turn the program over to you. And you know, we're still running ahead, so you're good. So go for it.
Great. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. What a fun afternoon this has been. It's been so awesome. My TBR list just keeps growing, getting a little stressed out. But I guess I thought I would start by kind of talking about the story behind the story of where this sort of came from. So after I had children, I struggled with some postpartum issues. And during that time, I really wasn't able to write. I had been writing books and things like that that are, you know, unpublished and sitting on my computer for years, but I couldn't find that creative well at that point in my life because I was struggling with some mental health issues. But, you know, over time that got better. And as I was able to come back to writing, I found myself kind of using writing as part of the healing process. And that's where sort of the character of Eve comes in. And Eve is not dealing with postpartum depression because she's a college freshman, but is dealing with depression. And I think as I was working through my depression, I was also sort of working through hers. So Eve, as I mentioned, is a college freshman, and she's also an aspiring fashion designer. And her life on the outside looks like it should be just fine. And to herself, she thinks her life should be just fine. But she's grown up in a home with a serious helicopter mom. And it's kind of left her without coping mechanisms. So when she leaves for school, she just she isn't ready for it. She doesn't have the maturity for it. And she slowly spirals into a depression. And it was really important to me to write a book that reflected depression accurately, but I didn't actually want to make people depressed reading it. And so that's kind of where Boop steps in. And Boop is her grandmother, and her grandmother has had some issues with depression in the past, but the grandmother we meet is wise, but also funny, and also a flawed character as well. So she comes to her wiseness through many a mistake she's made in her past. And the book goes back and forth between the two of them. So, you know, you might spend the chapter in Eve's little dark place, but then you get to Boop and you get to see some light and some joy, and there's like hope. Okay, well, Boop got through her thing, so hopefully, you know, Eve's going to follow suit. And in fact, the story is, I think of it as a love story between the two of them, as they both Eve deals with her future and getting herself together and finding herself, and Boop helps her to do that. And Boop has some mistakes from her past that she's needs to deal with in order to help Eve. So they both kind of have their reckoning, and they do it on a road trip, which kind of adds a little element of fun and spontaneity and that kind of thing. So part of the idea of Boop came from the fact she's kind of inspired by my grandmother, who had passed away just before I had my first child. And many of the things that happened with Boop are based on some of the things that had happened to my own grandmother. And so it was kind of my way of having my grandmother help me through my hard time when she couldn't really be there in real life. Boop has a fun way of talking that a lot of the people who read the book enjoy. And those of you who are from the South, you would certainly appreciate some of it. But sometimes she says wise things, like one quote is, "Every girl needs a good cry now and again. It washes out her heart." And then sometimes she says things like, "Those college kids are busier than mustard trying to catch up." So I call them little Boopisms, and they're sprinkled throughout. And I think they add sort of a little lighthearted thing to offset some of the more serious parts of the book. When I was a kid, my own grandmother and I used to sit on her balcony, and it overlooked a 4-lane highway, and we used to count campers as they went by, and we like have kept track of, oh, last time we saw 12, this time how many units? See, I don't know, it was silly, but we talked about how when I turned 16, we were going to rent a camper and we were going to travel across the country together. But by the time I turned 16, it became apparent that neither of us were capable of driving a camper across the country. And my grandmother's health probably really wasn't up to it either. She had some bad arthritis, and sitting in a car that long would have been painful. So we took some shorter trips together in a normal car. But kind of the idea of putting Boop and Eve on this road trip was sort of like, here's the road trip I never got to have with my grandma. So they start in Florida and they make their way up to Virginia, and they go through real places like Savannah and St. Augustine, and they go to imaginary places. Generally, if they didn't like the place, I made it imaginary because I didn't want to trash any real place. But anyway, through their travels, you see some different aspects of the American South. And so, I mean, that's kind of the big part. It did win an American Fiction Award for coming of age, in the coming of age category. When I started writing the book, Eve was a little bit younger, and I thought it was just going to be Eve's story. And so it was actually going to be a YA novel. But Eve kept getting older, and Boop kept taking more and more of a presence. So it's more of a dual protagonist, and it is an adult novel, but there's definitely some coming of age components to it. And I kind of think of Boop as coming of age as well. I mean, she might be 80, but she's sort of, doing some big growth in her story too. So never too late to come of age, I say, right? So I guess, it's a kind of book that if you like the South, you like grandmas, you like fashion or road trips, you probably would enjoy this book. Couple other things I wanted to mention while I had the floor is I wanted to talk a little bit about Bookish Road Trip, which Kathy mentioned a few minutes ago. Bookish Road Trip is a Facebook group, and we talk about books and we talk about traveling, and we have like lovely, real, intimate conversations with strangers, which is kind of cool on Facebook. And we tend to stay away from things that are controversial or political. So that's kind of a nice spot in a social media world that tends to not necessarily offer spots for that. So anyway, if you're interested, check that out. And I also wanted to mention, I have a website. It's maryhelensheriff.com. And on that website, I have a blog, I have a newsletter. The blog does things like author interviews and literary care packages, and book recommendations, and book club ideas. If you're hosting one like at your house, things you could have with the food and things like that. But also right now, I just put up a 50 states reading challenge, which is like a blank map and a tracker and some suggested books for each state. And the idea is that you read a book from a state and you can color it in on the map and write it down and try to get all 50 states. Just a fun way to like maybe challenge yourself this year to read some different kinds of things. And I figured since a lot of us are stuck at home and can't travel the way many of us enjoy, it's a fun way to travel from your chair. So thought I would mention that. And sorry. And I guess that's the main highlights that I wanted to bring up, but I'm happy to take any questions anyone might have. Can't hear you, Kathy.
If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand about either the Bookish Road Trip. And she's very inviting. I mean, she's been very nice of sharing my things. The wonderful thing about our book club is we're an inclusive with members. I pick the authors, but I want as many bloggers and to work together, because we have pockets in the country where people know about books of those people in the Low Country or in the Pacific Northwest, but there's got to be somebody who can connect it. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to be the good big connector of getting us all connected, not only throughout the United States, but as the world expands, we should too. So I was really excited when I saw it's so clever. Your graphics are awesome on your site. And it always amazes me of how all my blogger friends come up with these great ideas on how to get people excited about reading. I mean, I know that not everybody reads as voraciously as I do. Even when I was a kid, the only other person that did was my classmate, Connie Doden, who became the head librarian for Eureka. She's now the Eureka Public Library head librarian. But I do think that if we can all connect with these stories, whether we're armchair reading or traveling, we're going to just be a better people. We're going to be more civil. We're going to have more kindness, more civility. And I think reading is going to lead us to world peace. So everybody share everybody that you possibly can. So any questions? I'm going to go back and forth between the pages to see if, raise your hand or if you have a comment or anything. Okay, yes, Kathleen.
Hi, Mary. So do you have your road trip planned out when the world is safe and opens up? Are you going to hit the road?
I have a lot of vacations planned starting in March. So I have some optimism that things are going to get good quickly. The first one in March is really like only an hour away. So I don't know if you'd even call that a road trip, but yeah, I do. We're hoping to go out west and do some national parks. Kind of thinking since a lot of that would be outside, things don't have to be perfect yet, but you know, better enough to feel comfortable actually getting there would be more the concern since I'm in Virginia. It's a long way and a lot of germs to pass through.
That's great. Anybody else have any comments of things to do? Anybody want to comment on where they want to go? I'm going to tell you where I want to go. Number one, India. I want to go to India because by gosh, I've lost myself in Bollywood films. I can't read all the time because my eyes are tired. So I started watching Bollywood films. And in fact, Saturday night, I'm sharing one of my favorites with you because for those of you that can make it, we've got a late night showing of Om Shanti Om starring Shah Rukh Khan. But I think whether you're storytelling in books or you're storytelling in films or art or music, we're all sharing our stories. And I think the armchair traveling, we're going to be doing this, I hate to tell you this, for another year. It's going to be going for another year. But in the meantime, go to her blog, read her books, and look at all the great ideas that she has for us to get really excited about reading. So I can't thank you enough, Mary. And I've invited Mary next year to bring on her author friends and for her to have a presence during Girlfriend Weekend, because it looks like it may be virtual. And I've decided that I'm going to, instead of cramming it together so much, because we're all trying to get from one Zoom to the other, we're going to have breaks. So I'm going to have it over a week. So we'll do some things where we'll work so we won't be so tightly packed and you guys can have a break to nap or eat with your family or something. But this is just a test. So this was a test. So thank you, Mary. I'm so excited you're here and I'm so excited for 2022. Do you have another book coming out?
Oh no, I'm slow. This one took me like 6 years.
Mine took me that long too.
So I have started a new one, but we're pretty far from it being,
gosh, now we have a poodle in. I've seen cats jumping all over. We're going to have a Pulpwood Queen meeting where we bring our pets, okay? I'm planning that for 2021. Okay, so next on our list, is Steve here? Steve Wiegenstein, are you here? I know I sent him the link. Where is he? Oh dear. Well, hopefully he'll jump in. Then we'll go. Is Marci Henna here? Okay, Marci's not here. So let me tell you what we're going to do.
Wait. I think
I'm here.
Yeah. No, Marci.
I'm here.
Yay, there you are. Okay, we're going to jump into you next.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
We're going to skip up a little bit. And I don't have your book, Marci, but I will tell you that Marci is not only got 2 books. When We Last Spoke was just made into a film. It's up on Netflix. I featured her on my Pulpwood Queen International Timber Guy Film Club. And if you have not seen it, this is the most lovely story. And you need to read her book, but it stars Cloris Leachman, who could be a Pulpwood queen, by the way, because she wears a lot of leopard in the show. Cloris Leachman, Melissa Gilbert. Who else is in it? Tell me some of the, oh, she's got her little hat.
It's kept slipping.
Corbin.
It's got Melissa Gilbert, Cloris Leachman, Corbin Burnson, and Darby Camp, Chandler Head, big cast.
A big cast, and it was filmed in Oklahoma and Georgia.
It was that's correct. Primarily in Georgia in the Toccoa area, and then a few days were spent in Oklahoma.
Well, I'm going to turn the program over to her and let her talk about her wonderful books and her fabulous film. You all, you've got to watch it. It's going to be available soon to purchase too, right?
Yes, it will. And it's actually on Amazon.com and on ChristianCinema.com. And the DVDs and Blu-rays will be out, probably, well, sometime late spring. I don't exactly have the right date.
No, you're going to love the story, everybody. So Marci, take it away.
Well, so nice to see everyone today. Thrilled to be amongst you. And Kathy, I'm so grateful for you. You've just been awesome to all of us for so long. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll just start out a little bit by telling you sort of the premise of the series. So here, I'm having trouble with this background I just downloaded today, and so I don't even think you could see my books. I'm holding them up, but they're not showing up. So it's the Fireside series, Fireside Texas series. The book that the movie is based on has the same title, When We Last Spoke. And then the newest book is What Lies Ahead. And it just picks up where the first one left off. So it starts in 1967. Two sisters who in the movie are played by Chandler Head and Darby Camp are just like all siblings. They fight all the time. They love each other. They stand up for each other, but they just are rambunctious and giving their mom a bit of a hard time. Their dad is going to have to go off to Vietnam, and their mother is not happy about that because she felt like he could get out of service. She did not want him to go. She is a former Broadway star, and she wants to get her career back on track. So when he leaves, she connects with her old agent in New York and dumps the kids on her in-laws' doorstep without any warning at all. And they are taken by surprise. And in the movie, those roles are played by Melissa Gilbert and Corbin Burnson. And they somehow pull themselves together, and they, with a lot of grace, step up to the plate and they raise these girls. And just as they're getting their feet under them, then who comes along but Cloris Leachman, who plays the role of Itasca. And she is also dumped off on their doorstep, and she has dementia and she has congestive heart failure. And one day she thinks she's Emily Dickinson and she wears those clothes. And the next day she's Eleanor Roosevelt. She is quite a hoot and very difficult at first, but through the movie and through the book, you will somehow come to love her. So that's the premise. And the story was really inspired because I loved my grandparents so much. We lived on a ranch together in the Texas Hill Country. And we lived about a mile down the road. And the story, by the way, that is in the series is not really true. There are little moments that are true, taken from everyday life, but the basic premise is not true. So every day we would walk to the school bus, which is about 2 miles down the road. And we would stop by my grandparents' house and they would bring us in and we'd have a snack, on the way home from school. And my grandfather would hold forth and he would tell stories for as long as I would listen to them, about his Texas Ranger, ancestors, about life on the farm, all sorts of stories. And he would lean back in this old office chair against the wall, and I was always sure that his wheels were going to shoot out from under him. He was going to hurt himself. He never did, but he influenced me greatly just hearing those stories. And after they passed, I wanted to preserve their memories and preserve the way they spoke, their pastimes, and just life on the ranch in general. And that's what I started the Fireside series. So I thought I'd read to you just a little bit, just to give you a flavor of the kind of writing style that I have in this series. So I'm going to read to you from my newest book because I think you'll understand the characters more quickly from these passages. So this is from What Lies Ahead. My name is Juliet, and I swear on my great-grandmother Itasca's grave that nearly everything I'm about to tell you is the gospel according to me. If I give you my word, then you can shake and bake it and eat it later, just like they did in those General Food commercials. I can't say what Evangeline's or Jewel's take on it might be, but that problem belongs to them. If you had lost your parents like dominoes in a row when you were 7 and 9.5 years old, as Evangeline and I did, your heart might be like hollow, bitter, dark chocolate without sweetness or depths. Instead, we were tended to by our grandparents, Walt and Ruby, like two small pots of bubbling dulce de leche. Now, what we have become is a mixture of sweet caramel and cream with only shavings from the old, bitter, dark past sprinkled on top. I have come to realize that whatever age you were when you were orphaned is the age you remain inside forever. So it is with Evangeline and me. What I have to say about all that is this: two good people with loving hearts can make a difference that cannot be measured. Now that I am 45 and Evangeline is trailing right behind me, I can look back and see what their goodness cost them. Years later, in February of 2003, I am beginning to discover that my life was like a box of crystal wedding oats with a treasure inside I could take out and examine once I blew the dust off it. Take Jewel Jamboree, for instance, who had been sparkly like cut glass until she broke one day. After college, except for phone calls, occasional holidays, and funerals, she vanished from our lives so completely that Evangeline and I could hardly remember the way she smelled of cinnamon and brown sugar from morning toast, or the way that she'd once held a tambourine waiting for her cue on station KOFF. Our grandmother Ruby had maintained that Jewel had a special calling on earth, that her mission was different from ours, but that it was important nonetheless. Whatever Ruby said, our grandfather Walt generally agreed with, and they both treated her as though she was just like us girls. Jewel was Pearl's daughter, her only child, and Ruby and Walt's only niece. It was her sudden reappearance, however, that took my breath away. Would you like to kind of know how I got into the film business? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely tell them that story. That's a great story.
Okay. Well, about 6.5 years ago, I lost my youngest brother. He was at the age of 47. And I decided, I had always seen this series in a very visual way. And I always saw it as a movie. And I thought, who knows how long any of us have here on this planet. And I better get with it if I really want to have this dream come true. And one day I was on Facebook and I was watching someone's book trailer. I'd never, ever heard of a book trailer. And I just knew that I was going to do that within 5 minutes. And so I decided I would. And within a month, I was actually filming the book trailer. And I floated it out on Facebook at the same time that my book came out. And it caught the attention of producer Fred Miller. And he came to me and said, would you be interested? So here we are. Through the process, though, I actually became a producer on the movie and have loved that job. It's a 7-day-a-week job, I have to say, even still today, even though the movie's out, there's a lot that goes with that. But it's been very interesting, quite an education, and I've really loved the journey. So we hope to make some more movies. We'll see. I've been working with director Joanne Hawk. She's fabulous, by the way, on some other screenplays for the series. So we will see.
Marci, one of the things that I found fascinating about your film is the locations. I would have never dreamed in a million years that, where the movies were set. Can you tell a little bit about the locations?
Sure. Well, Toccoa, Georgia is about 95 miles kind of northeast of Atlanta. And it's a small town that you can easily get the feel of being in the 1960s or even earlier than that. And it seems as though every resident has an antique car in their garage, which came in very handy during the filming of the period movie. We, so many of them have got lots of great funny stories just about the cars. But it's a, you know, beautiful, beautiful little town. I love people. I've been friends with a lot of them now. We keep in touch. And it had the Knoll soda fountain that we used in the movie as well. But it was wonderful to film. And just to let you know about, I don't know if any of you have ever been on a movie set very much or been in the film business, but those are long days. We would film for 12 hours, not a day, not our child stars. They filmed for 8, and we took very regimented breaks during the day. But we would start sometimes at 5:30 in the morning, or we might not even start till 9 at night, and then film, you know, throughout the night, depending on what we needed for the movie. But the funny thing is, you know, no matter what time you get there, the first meal you have is breakfast. So if you start at 9 o'clock, you get breakfast at 9 p.m. at night, or 2 in the afternoon, or whatever time you start. But they're long days. We filmed 6 days a week, and took Sunday off. But even on those days, we were working. You know, I was entertaining some of the crew or the producers or somebody, and cooking and just doing laundry, that kind of thing. But the other days were quite full, but fun. I mean, I really liked it, loved it.
What was the most, you know, Cloris Leachman has
Yeah.
been a favorite of mine for decades. I mean, I absolutely loved her on Dancing with the Stars, to tell you the truth. But what was she like to work with in this film?
Well, Cloris was 92 when we filmed. She's going to be 95 shortly, and was a hoot. You know, she's a comedian, and just is funny all day long. Was always doing things. She would be flirting with a cameraman, or having escapades with chocolate. She just loved chocolate, and we would try to, you know, take the chocolate away so we could shoot pictures or whatever. And she would, no, she wanted to finish that chocolate. She was just funny all the way through. But when she walked into a room, she stole every scene that she's in. She just walks in a room and your face lights up. You just have to start laughing at Cloris. And she kind of ruled the roost on the set and kind of kept everybody in line a little bit, but she was a joy.
Well, Melissa Gilbert, I grew up watching Melissa Gilbert on the Little House series. So, you know, I think anybody that watched family television
Right.
knows her and knows that. I think she was the president of the Academy of Motion Pictures at one time, wasn't she? Or
she was, or Screen Actors Guild, I think it was.
Yeah, Screen Actors Guild.
Screen Actors Guild. She is really an interesting person too, and I spent quite a bit of time talking to Melissa, and Melissa really was the consummate professional on the screen. She always hit her mark. She was always prepared, always even helped with our young stars, because she had been a young star on Little House on the Prairie, and so she took them under her wing and really was very helpful with them, and really I enjoyed her. I really did. And then Corbin, this was a very different role for Corbin Burnson, because he played heavy roles like in LA Law or Psych, very tough kind of guys. But the Walt that the grandfather is the role he played at our show. And it took a couple of days for him to kind of fit into that role, because it took so that he got to know the heart of Walt, because Walt is kind of a Santa Claus kind of a guy. He looks like a crusty rancher, but he's got this huge heart, and he's always filled with love for his family, always trying to make things better, trying to be healing for his family members, and, you know, in a tough spot of raising his granddaughters. So he wound up doing a fantastic job. He's been nominated for an award, as have Cloris and Melissa too. They've all been nominated for different awards. So I'm very proud of their performances. We had a very interesting thing with one of our young ladies who played Juliet and Evangeline. One of them the one who played Juliet. Her mother played the adult version of her. So it was a mother-daughter team playing the same role in different time periods. And that was really lovely, or a really interesting thing to do. Enjoyed them. And those two little girls have huge resumes. They've been on like The Glass Castle, There's the Right Stuff. I don't know if you know that, maybe Chandler Head has been in the Right Stuff, and Bossy Vernon and the Glass Castle, a big red dog. I mean, these girls were so professional, and they'd be playing just like all kids do, and they'd be singing made up libretto. They're incredibly talented, so they can sing, they can dance, they can do it all. But they'd be just doing what kids always do until you'd hear that sound has speed, and then action, and then they would be in character. No matter what they've been doing 2 seconds before, they were in character and on it. And at such young ages, I was so amazed by that how well.
It's really kind of cool because Jeannette Wall's book, The Glass Castle, was a Pulpwood Queen International Book Club selection. She's been here 3 times.
Oh,
and in fact, another one of our films, when I sold my book to DreamWorks, the screenwriter came and she'd just done the film Blended. And she brought the child actress that was in Blended to our Girlfriend Weekend. So we've always had a little, in fact, one year we even had a Pulpwood Queen Film Festival because we had a documentary made of our weekend. So, hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of that, and especially now with my film club. So if any of you guys sell your film rights and television shows or Netflix series, reach out to me and let me know, and we'll get you on our film club show. But I can't thank you enough, Marci. Marci lives down in Austin, Texas, and also in Santa Fe. So we're just thrilled that you could be a part of this, and hope you'll be there tonight when we interview the authors. And you all, any questions that you have for Marci before we move to our last speaker? Oh, yes, Kathleen.
It's not a question, but Marci, my husband and I watched your film.
Oh.
He's a big old bad guy. He bawled like a baby on certain sections. I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a scene where Walt's in the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so emotional, and the whole movie is so well done.
Well done.
I have the novel. My baby sister's already read the novel, and my big sister, I bought it for her, so she's got the novel. And then we're going to have a private 3-sister Zoom meeting to discuss your first novel.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. I appreciate you watching the movie and for your kind words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marci. Keep us in touch so we can keep on the loop for the Fireside series. Yes, Eileen, do you have your arm up? Oh, you're clapping. Okay. Well, we're all clapping. Thank you so much. And we have one more author for this mega panel today. The Pulpwood Queen Presents. We have an author that was here several years ago, Steve Wiegenstein, who is from Missouri. He's a college professor, and he has got an award-winning short story collection. I love short stories. And Steve, I saw you come on board. I know you're here. Where did I see you?
Here I am. I'm right here.
Okay, I'm looking. Wave, there you are, right in the middle.
There I am.
Okay, I'm glad,
Hi, Kathy.
glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a big thrill. Tell us about this new book. We want to hear all about it.
Well, it came out not quite 2 months ago. Scattered Lights is the title, and it's a collection of short stories. I think it was 2018 that I was down in Nacogdoches with you all for the in-person weekend, and I can't wait till those resume so that we can have them again. But since that time, I've assembled this collection of stories. Some of them, they've been published over the decades. I always keep doing some short fiction, even while I'm working on novels. And so some of them are from 10 or 15 years ago, and others have never been published before, but are just coming out for the first time in this book. They're all set in my home state of Missouri, which is also the setting for my novels. And unlike the novels, which are historical, these are contemporary. So these are all set in the more or less the present day. I'm a country boy, and I like to write about country people. And so these are all folks who are either from small towns or who live in small towns and are experiencing some of the challenges of rural life and small town life, some more successfully than others. Some of the stories are kind of funny, but others are kind of grim. You know how that goes. And I put this collection together with a publisher also from Missouri called Corner Post Press, and they were just absolutely wonderful to work with. And they put together the collection and were just so wonderful as far as editing and offering suggestions and finding cover art and consulting with me at every turn and every minute. So there was a dream come true for me to work with a publisher who was so accommodating and insightful and friendly. So I've been really excited about this collection of stories. And it's been, you know, as always, it's been a bit of a ride to get things put together, but things have been going really well. So I've been doing presentations at a lot of libraries and for book groups and things like that, to talk about the stories and kind of give people a sense of where I'm at as a writer. So even though it's all happening on Zoom these days, still getting the word out a little bit, I guess, as much as possible. It's good to see you all. It's great to be able to be on here.
Well, your first book was The Language of Trees, and that's what caught my attention. And then I heard you tell us about this award that you won for your book.
Well, The Language of Trees it's called the Walter Williams Major Work Award. That's the Missouri Writers Guild issues that, and Walter Williams was the founder of the Missouri Writers Guild back in 1915, so they named the award after him. And it goes to whatever book from a Missouri author or who's set in Missouri that they considered the major work of the year. So that was a big thrill. Scattered Lights was named. It's sort of I'll call it award. The reviewers for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the newspaper in St. Louis, picked what they call their top 25 books of 2020. And it was one of that top 25 books of 2020. So I was really thrilled when they named it one of their 25 favorite books of the year, which included things, you know, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, Missouri authors, nationwide publications and things like that. So that was really a thrill for me to see that. So it's been getting some nice recognition. I've really been tickled by that.
You know, I should have asked everybody, maybe we'll get this covered tonight in our author introductions, but you're a professor at a university, and tell us about that.
Well, since the last time you saw me, I am now a retired professor.
Oh, retired professor.
I was teaching English for Central Methodist University, which is here in Central Missouri. And in the spring semester, of course, we had to go online and start doing all of our classes by remote, interaction. And so about March, I thought, maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is a sign from the heavens. It's time for me to hang it up and just focus on writing instead, because it was available to me to do. And I thought, what better time to tiptoe out the door than when everybody is in a total state of chaos.
Oh my goodness.
So I've been happy.
Does anybody have a question for Steve about any of this before we conclude this last panel. I have something I want to do before we go, but is there any, I'm going back and forth to see on the pages if anybody's raising their hand, if you have any burning questions or anything for Steve. But I really, oh yes, Mandy, did you raise your hand or are you stirring tea again? You did?
So out of the stories in the collection, how old is the oldest story?
I think, I haven't looked back at this, but I think one of the stories was from when I was a graduate student. And as you can see by my gray hair, I'm not a graduate student anymore. And I think that was published in 1985. So that was the first one. So that'd be, 35 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think there's one from back there. Most of them are from the 90s and afterwards, though. They really kind of a big range. And it was kind of fun for me to look back at some of these old stories that had been published in magazines and think, that's a pretty good story. That's not bad.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, currently my favorite is a new story. There's a brand new one that was never published that I worked on earlier, or I guess last year now. It's called Weeds and Wildness, and it's about a kid who just graduated from high school. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He's kind of aimless feeling, and he kind of, he finds a job in his hometown, but then sort of gravitates halfway by accident toward an involvement with kind of a criminal figure who is the dad of one of his high school friends, and then things kind of go sideways for him from there on out. But I really like that story because even though things are not completely settled at the end, there's a sense of reconciliation and maybe some forward movement for this young man. So I think that's my current favorite anyway. I'll put it that way.
Well, I can't recommend Steve's books enough. He's a wonderful writer, and he has a delightful wife who won our tiara contest at that
That's
girlfriend
right.
weekend. Yes,
She's standing over there too.
Oh, but we'll have to get you back when we finally, if we ever get to meet together again. But yay, there you are. Hi, good to see you. The wonderful thing about husbands and wives who bring their husbands, like Betty Koval's Bill, they become just as big a part of our book family as the author themselves. So we welcome all family members to the wonderful family of International Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys. So thank you for being here, Steve. We're going to have, oh yes, what do you want to say, Betty?
I just wanted to say, I feel like I'm an author. It's rubbed off on me so much.
We'll get a book out of you yet.
And I don't write a word.
I'm going to start the writers group in February, Betty. So, you guys get ready. But this will conclude our afternoon. We're going to get a break. Oh my God, you guys are take a nap. We're going to get a break. But before we go, Kim is here. Kim, wave your hand. Kim will be our next panel, and she's going to be here on with Just Between Friends Book Club, because this is a book club in New Jersey that took it upon themselves to write a fiction book about a book club. And I love it so much because all the book references, and finally we have a book or a story about a book club that's real and not one that, they're reading 50 Shades of Grey, they're reading real books. And I'm very excited about having Kim back because she has a sequel. The first book was Novel Women. And what are we calling the second book? Is it Novel Women 2? Okay, unmute yourself, Kim, and just show them what they're going to see at 6 o'clock, because it involves wine, which we're
lots of wine.
our breathless wine. So if you all want to bring your wine back at 6 o'clock,
Yes.
you're more than welcome to, because she's going to be sharing her story. So y'all take a quick break. You know, I'm going to get together with my team and figure out how we can make this even better. But I think it went really well considering. So,
Very well.
Thank you
Very
for
good.
bearing with me. I had no idea how to pull this off. And it's all Marilyn Simon Rothstein's. She started this whole conversation with, you've got to have it, Kathy. The authors need it, Kathy. You know, the book club members need it, Kathy. And luckily for me, I have Echo Garrett, my publisher, and Douglas Thomas and Mandy Haynes, who came aboard. And you guys, we haven't had sleep in, I guess, 24, 48 hours. We were up working on this, trying to figure out how to get the Zooms out to everybody who paid and not make it public, you know? So, you know, it's a work in progress, but thank you all for paying to come to Girlfriend Weekend. I guarantee it, I'll make it worth your while, and we'll see you at 6 o'clock. So we will conclude our first day of Girlfriend Weekend. Yay! Let's give ourselves a pat on the back, okay? Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you in a few. Bye, you guys.